10, 2025, good old 710 KNUS, beautiful, beautiful weekend headed our way. It's Mother's Day. Everything looks great, and it's good to be here, and Stefan was good. It was good to have the man back in the building. We have a show coming up. I want to do something for a very deserving young. There's a benefit coming up not only this Saturday, but next Saturday. Let me get to that in a moment. But Brad Meltzer is with us this morning, who is unbelievable. The Palestinians return. And we're marking the loss of two people that I met Mickey Gilley, and I loved Mickey Gilley's music and everything about, if you saw the Urban Cowboy film, and everything was about Gilley's. And then also Johnny Rodriguez, and there's stories about Johnny Rodriguez. We'll talk about it. But in the meantime, and in between time, this is Brando and the guys down at Devil's Head have hearts as big as the moon, and they turned me on to Chris Johnson. Hey, Chris. Good morning and welcome to the radio show, and thanks for coming on with us.
Hey, Pete, thanks for having me on, and thanks, Brandon, for spreading the word.
Yeah, he has a wonderful heart, and he told me about you guys, and so if you would just take time, and we'll have you on next Saturday as well, but talk about the car show, and then we're going to ride as well, so if you would, please.
Yeah, so today here in Thornton, the address is 8590 Pearl Street. It's a car show we're putting on. It's hosted by the Greasy Wheels Car Club. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're doing a 50-50 raffle. It's $10 to enter your car. We got food trucks out here. We got vendors set up. All the money raised for this is going to go to a very special little girl that is near and dear to my heart. Her name is Linda. She's a 6-year-old little girl who is was recently diagnosed with DIPG brain cancer. And this happened on March 26th. She's currently going through radiation treatment now, and she's got about 4 more days left of radiation. Now, if nobody knows anything about DIPG brain cancer, it's a tumor on the brain stem, and it is inoperable. This happens in kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. And average life expectancy with this cancer is only about 9 months. So we will have little Linda out here today for this car show. She'll be out about 10 o'clock. I hope she can stick around most of the day and enjoy it with us. We got two big tow trucks out here flying a banner in the air with Linda's picture on it. Like I said, again, all the proceeds raised on this car show is going to go to Linda and her family.
It's very kind. Very kind. So we're going to there's a motorcycle ride next weekend. So this weekend is the car show. And so, again, Brando turned me on to all of this, and we wanted to get you on the plug. So it starts as we speak. And to give the address of the locale to bring your car or to go up and see good cars. One more time, Chris, if you would.
Yeah, so again, it's in Thornton. The address is 8590 Pearl Street, located at the Greasy Wheels Car Club. So right now we got about 150 cars here.
Oh, wow.
Looking to hit, about 300 cars.
All right.
We got the road closed down. We're taking up from 87th Avenue to 85th Avenue. So plenty of room to come up, park your car. Like I said, we got food vendors out here. We got other vendors selling stuff. 50-50 raffle, silent auction. Other prizes getting raffled off as well.
Well, good. So, I mean, all is well. And guys like you make the world turn around. So, Chris, thanks. And thanks to Brando. And we'll speak with you next week about the motorcycle event. So,
Pete, if you don't mind, let me maybe just shout out about the motorcycle thing right now. That way, if anybody is interested, they can pre-register with us, or they can even go on. We're listed on Eventbrite. If you just punch in motorcycle on the search bar, it'll pop up Ride for Linda. We're asking $20 a rider, $10 a passenger. We got a ton of raffle prizes for that. Some signed sports memorabilia. We got some concert tickets. Leather jacket from G-Force Motorsports. In that one, we are leaving Dirty Dogs. Registration opens at 10 a.m., Kickstands up at 12. and we're going to parade ride by Linda's house, and then finish the ride up at Jerry D's up in Dacono. And there'll be a live band up there.
Sure.
So, you can register there at the bike ride. You can go on Eventbrite right now and register if it's something you guys want to come out and do. We'd love to have as many riders as we can get out. If you guys want to know more about Linda, go on Love for Linda Facebook page. You can learn all kinds of stuff about her and what's going on. And we also have a GoFundMe set up for her. You guys can donate to that through the Facebook page as well.
Good man.
So,
all right, sir. Well, we'll talk probably during the week, but I'll certainly have you back up on the radio show next Saturday. And you got a good heart, Chris, and you're a good man. So, the best.
Well, thanks, Pete. Thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
Let's go get them. Thanks, brother, man.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Now, 303-696-1971. Good morning, everyone. 710 KNUS Weather Center weather. 79 will be the high, and tomorrow, Sunday, more beautiful. Beautiful for Mom. It's going to be 83 and 86 on Monday. So, as I mentioned, this is sort of the warm-up hour, and then we'll get into the guest. Again, Brad Meltzer coming on. It means so much to me. He is, I think, over time, perhaps the most interesting and dynamic guest that we've had. He's done such amazing work as a writer and a novelist, and he writes children's books, and he's done television shows, and he's just really one of a kind. And then the Palestinians are coming back. There's been so much going on now. Israel is going to occupy Gaza. We will talk with them. But in the meantime, this is open line, so it's 303-696-1971. Good morning. Two things happened, and they both happened on Friday. The death of Mickey Gilley and the death of Johnny Rodriguez. And then also the conflict between India and Pakistan, the disputed region of Kashmir. Again, it's another example of once where the British have been, problems will always remain. And that was another one of those parts of the world where the empire, the British Empire, grabbed and held India and Pakistan. And you remember the war in Bangladesh, and that used to be part of Pakistan, and just what they did. This was part of what the British did. And so now it remains. But I really I was really, when I came in, I said to the young guys who really do run the show, I said, you know who Mickey Gilley is? Or Mickey Gilley was? They said, no. I said, you're kidding me. And is that the boss? Does he want to come on? No. Okay. And they said, I said, I don't know who Mickey Gilley is. I said, you don't know who Mickey Gilley is? And I mentioned Johnny Rodriguez, and that went over their heads too. So we got any Mickey Gilley music? We got Mickey lined up. What song we got, Adam? Because he did some Stand By Me from, of course. There was a bar in a place called Pasadena, Texas, and it was called Gilley's. And it got highlighted when Travolta did. Travolta changed so many different things. When he did Saturday Night Fever, disco hit. He really did it. He takes it away. You know, the war in Southeast Asia ends. Richard Nixon resigns. The beginning of Jimmy Carter. And the music changes. Protest music changes. The time of the really, and the kind of music that was popular now becomes disco. Who's there? Travolta. Travolta does Saturday Night Fever. Then after everybody kind of burns out on, and I worked in disco joints, and people have started burning out on that, what happens? Boom. Along comes next phase of music that becomes popular, and it's country music. But it's also, it's outlaw music, too, in many, many ways. It's Tom, Paul, Glaser, the Glaser brothers. It's we were talking about, people like Mickey Gilley, who come along. Mickey really was an outlaw, but a lot of those Texas bands were. And so Johnny Rodriguez, and the story, as the story goes, and I've heard yes and I've heard no, that Johnny Rodriguez has stolen a goat, and they had barbecued a goat, him and a bunch of his friends, and they got caught. And he was in jail, and he was singing. And they said that Johnny Cash was in town. Joaquin Jackson is this very legendary Texas Ranger. As the story goes, Joaquin Jackson goes to Johnny Cash and says, "You got to listen to this guy who's sitting in jail for stealing the goats." And Johnny Cash goes to the jail and he listens to Johnny Rodriguez sing, and he books Rodriguez. Maybe true, maybe not. But there's a song, and it's there really is an outlaw singer who puts this thing together, and he has a line in the song called, and there's a song that said long before Rodriguez stole that goat, and it's called Long Hair. Let's see, was country DJs know that I'm an outlaw, and they won't come to see me in this bar. And it's David Allan Coe. And he has a line in the song that says, "Johnny Cash helped me get out of prison." He was in Ohio, in penitentiary in Ohio, I think. And he said, "Johnny Cash helped me get out of prison long before Rodriguez stole the goat." And nobody got the line. Nobody understood what they were singing about Johnny Rodriguez stealing goats. Well, Bob and I, my mentor Bob Lee and I, once did a radio show with Charlie Daniels. And that's the first time we talked about it. Charlie Daniels, oh, yeah. Now, whether the story is true or not, I don't know. But Johnny Rodriguez, who apparently was like this really great kid growing up, his dad died when he was young, and then his brother was killed in an automobile accident. These are the stories I've heard. And he goes rogue. He goes bad. He's hanging out with bad kids. And they boost this goat. They barbecue it. And he gets caught. He's in jail. And Joaquin Jackson hears him sing. Goes and gets Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash hears him. Now, whether that's a true story or not, Mickey Gilley, on the other hand, I was telling the guys, I was telling Stephen didn't know this part of it as well. Mickey Gilley had two cousins. For all the money and what's behind the curtain and the new car and the box that Adam's pointing to, who were Mickey Gilley's first cousins? It's a really great tie-in. And they were from a place called Faraday, Louisiana. And my mentor, Bob Lee, and I, we emceed one of these two people. And the dad, was the grandfather of all three of them, was the head of the Klan. And he had Lee in his name. And so all three of these men who have made their mark in the world, all three of them have Lee in their name. All three of them can play the hell out of a piano. And since nobody seems to take the bait, it's Mickey Gilley, and it's Jerry Lee Lewis, it's Jimmy Swaggart. The evangelics say that, Peter. And they all have Lee. It's Mickey Lee, it's Jerry Lee, obviously Jerry Lee Lewis, and it's Jimmy Lee Swaggart. And they're all three first cousins, and they can all three play. And Johnny goes one way, and Mickey goes one way, and Jimmy Swaggart goes one way, and Jerry Lee, what are you going to say about Jerry Lee Lewis? And apparently, Jerry Lee was bedside when he passed. So I don't care what you want to play. John, he had a song called "The Girls All Get Prettier Closing Time." that's a Mickey Gilley. He did "Wine, Wine, Wine." He did so many great songs, and they had that bar, and the bar was in a place called Pasadena, Texas, and Bob Lee and I were taken there. It burned down, and it was allegedly kind of mobbed up a little bit, but nobody better. In case you don't know, Johnny Rodriguez was 73, Mickey Gilley was 86. Loved them both. Play one. Play one. Whatever you pick, I don't care. Hit it. Doom, doom, doom. Mickey. Listen to them play. Girls all get prettier. So true. Remember when Travolta's dancing? Starts it out. Pace. Doom, doom, doom. Doom, 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 doom. The backstreet bars. Wow. We can calm that, but I saw him perform live, and he and Jerry Lee did it too. They turned sideways on the piano stool, and they turned sideways and looked at the audience and played. They didn't look. Concert pianists were always look straight ahead, and they turned sideways and played, and Jerry Lee would take his heel, run his heel down. Bob and I emceed him too, man. It was like he didn't talk to us. He didn't want to talk to us. And then of course and then Jimmy Swaggart, and what a time. Let's start with Steve. We got an open line so we can run this up until we have Brad on the show. Steve, you're on a radio show Saturday morning, man. Welcome. Thanks.
Good morning, Peter.
Yeah.
The Travolta movie was Urban Cowboy.
That's right. What did I say?
But no, you did. I didn't think you said it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I wanted to go back. I read Charlie Hustle.
Oh man.
And oh my gosh, I read a bunch of these serious books. One I know you read was G-Man about Hoover.
Oh yeah.
But this was fantastic.
Isn't that a good book?
And oh my goodness. And you know what? I have two thoughts, and I'm interested what you think. One is, he was put on this earth to play baseball. I mean, he loved everything about it.
Agreed.
And then number two is, there had to be somebody that he trusted, that he liked, that he cared about him, that have a heart-to-heart talk early on, and this all could have been alleviated.
But his father was him. Big Pete was, he was Pete. There was Big Pete, and then Little Pete Petey, who was his son, who tried to play ball and never could make it. But remember, the old man. Remember, there's two things that's important. They live on the river in Cincinnati, and there used to be a guy who was a chopper builder. This is a true story. The guy that he built these choppers. They were really great choppers, and they were called Sucker Punch Sally. That was the name of the choppers, and choppers, motorcycle choppers. And we were in Sturgis, and I really liked them. I did a radio show about motorcycles then. And I said, hey, man, why do you call these motorcycles Sucker Punch Sally? And he said, we named them motorcycles after my grandmother, who was notorious for knocking guys off of bar stools and river bars in Cincinnati. And they were just tough kids. Pete Rose was a tough kid.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'll bring you back. Let me put you on hold and bring you back. Put him on hold. We're going to take a break. 710 KNUS Saturday morning, May the 10th. Weather for Mom tomorrow, 83. Beautiful for Mom. Hold on to your hats. Open lines. Here we go. Johnny Rodriguez. Huh? What a great song. Ride my thumb. I'm riding my thumb to Mexico. Johnny Rodriguez is gone. That song means a lot to me. I'll tell you what. Remember, have themes in your life. You hear the music. That's it. This was one of them. They were Tejano singers, and Johnny Rodriguez allegedly had stolen a goat, and he was in jail. And Joaquin Jackson, but you're talking about a legend. Joaquin Jackson goes and tells Johnny Cash, listen to this guy sing. So we lost two, Mickey Gilley and Johnny Rodriguez. We got a caller on line one, Steve. We'll go back to Steve. All right, so we were talking about Pete Rose and what a hardcore the guy was. No, the guy belongs in the Hall of Fame. I don't think there's a question, or perhaps there is.
You know, this is anecdotal, but everyone that I've talked to about this, they say the same thing, and I agree. And that book it shows how baseball changed. You know, when you had Marvin Miller, and then you got the reserve clause out of there, and the money just exploded.
That's what makes Curt Flood such a hero, and people today. I mean, how many people do you think know who Curt Flood was? But
no one, hardly.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. But
I grew up near St. Louis when they had those great teams: Curt Flood, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson.
You bet.
But what a tragedy Rose is. That's a one of a kind type of thing.
And he ends signing autographs, and they catch him with a young girl, according to the end of the book, that he's a greeter. He was a greeter in one of the casinos
at Caesar's Palace and Mandalay Bay.
There,
yeah. And you know, that's how Joe Louis ended up as a greeter out there.
He was a greeter, and who helped him was Sinatra.
Oh my!
Yeah,
my!
Sinatra helped Joe Louis. I met the bomber. We were talking about fighters yesterday. I had lunch with a bunch of old fighters, and Joe Louis, Bill Daniels helped Joe Louis. Joe Louis had gotten himself in a lot of trouble, not only the tax fights and everything else, but other things that happened to Joe Louis. And Bill Daniels took him under his wing, and so the first time Ronnie Lau fights professionally, he had come out of the penitentiary to fight. And I wasn't even in the business then, but I wanted to go because I love boxing. And we got tickets, and we went to see the fight. Myself and another guy who's now gone, Russ Perone, and we went to see the fight. And there was Joe Louis. He was there because of Bill Daniels, and yet we stood in a line about 3 miles long. I just wanted to shake his hand. And
oh my goodness!
I shook his hand, and the thing that struck me was his arms from his elbow to his wrist, it didn't taper. it was like just straight, and he had these enormous hands. But he was the bomber, and I later got to know his son. But that was the first Ron Lau fight, and there's Joe Louis. So you're absolutely right. I mean, there were certain guys, and all the money that the bomber made, and then the government took it. And no matter what he had done during the Second World War to raise money, they made him have those tax fights, and those were the fights where he really got hurt in those fights.
And Rose served time in the penitentiary. And just one other quick note, and I'll let you go.
No, please.
You know, now they're just sports is besieged with all this legalized gambling.
Right.
So you go to the Cincinnati Park today, you'll see DraftKings, all these people betting on their phones with apps.
Sure.
And I guess the punishment doesn't fit. But he was ostracized from the world. The way he lived the end of his life.
Yeah. His problem, according to the book, and you read it, is that he lied. He went into the commissioner's office and lied. Had he not lied, because we were talking about it in football. Let's see, Alex Karras is in the hall, and who was the running back? Paul Hornung. They bet. They were bettors.
And the book talks about Ty Cobb and Tress Peaker, that they were gamblers.
Oh, and Ty Cobb was a horrible racist. And
a horrible, mean racist.
Didn't he see his father kill his mother? Didn't he see that?
Is that Ty Cobb?
I think it was Ty Cobb. Saw his father kill his mother.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah, that's said.
I'll let you go.
All right, man.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Somebody else told me. I think Ty Cobb did see his mother killed by his father. 303-696-1971, who allegedly also said, when they think Joe Jackson's playing under another name, or it was in a grocery store. It was in the grocery store, and Ty Cobb stops and goes in, and Joe is working behind the counter in a southern grocery store, and he's so embarrassed of himself. And I think Joe Jackson was an illiterate. And Ty Cobb said, "That's the finest ball player that ever lived." And he points to him. Mikey Boyle. Yeah, that is an encyclopedia. All right, what's the truth, Mikey? Thank you for coming on. What was the truth about Joe Jackson and Ty Cobb?
You know what? I'm sorry, I don't know, but I heard you talking about Joe Louis, Pete.
Yeah.
And I feel like an interloper on your show. I'm getting ready to do my show in Colorado Springs, and I hear this good stuff every Saturday, and I say, well, I need to call in.
Well, I'm glad.
I've traveled to Spain with a guy named Joe Barrow, B-A-R-R-O.
That's Joe Louis's son.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, sure.
And Joe Jr. and I and some other folks were on a radio trip back in the 80s to Spain, down to the Costa del Sol and so forth. And we just had a fascinating time.
Oh, yeah.
Just enjoyed listening to him. And when we got back, he sent me Joe Louis, 50 Years an American Hero.
Oh, absolutely.
Joe Louis Barrow Jr. and Barbara Munder, M-U-N-D-E-R, with a foreword by Arthur Ashe. And
sure.
And then there's a nice little inscription by Gerald Ford. Joe Louis made a unique impact during the important segment of our history. This book will be a contribution to American literature.
His father, Joe, by the way, it was the other way around. Thank you, about 8 million texters. Ty Cobb's mother, Amanda, shot his father, William. So it was the other way around. Amanda was charged voluntary manslaughter, was later acquitted. The incident occurred when Amanda claimed to have mistaken her husband for an intruder when he entered the home. She believed he was out of town. Maybe. Ty Cobb said, my father had his head blown off with a shotgun when I was 18 by a member of my own family. I never got over that. So I remembered it backwards.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but Joe Louis's father was one of the syphilis experiments, and they moved to Detroit, and he has to change his name to fight because his mother. So he becomes Joe Louis, but he was Joe Barrow, and he changes his name to get into the ring to fight. The same thing was true with Rocky Graziano, because he was an AWOL fight. He was AWOL from the Army and was taking fights for money. And there was a local wine called Graziano, and he took that name to get in the ring and fight. And remember, during the time when especially with Jewish fighters, they didn't want Jewish fighters, and they certainly didn't want black fighters, black heavyweights. So a lot of Jewish fighters took Irish names and fought under Irish names, as did a lot of Spanish guys. They fought under Irish names. No, it's so, like you said, it's so.
Well, the history of boxing is really a history of the United States.
It's a history.
Yeah. There's other segments, obviously, as well that can say the same thing. But when you go through it, this book, we were in Spain in 1984, so 40 years ago, and I just looked. The book came out in 1988, and it not only has forewords by Gerald Ford and Arthur Ashe, but it's got forwards by Howard Cosell and Andrew Young, of course, used to be the mayor of Atlanta, and John Thompson, who was the coach at Georgetown. But, I think that you can read stuff like this. I don't focus much on biographies or autobiographies, but you can sure learn an awful lot if you take the time to read some of this stuff. And I just thought I'd share this with your listeners.
Joe Louis, people argue about who was the greatest of all time, who was this, who was that. And I'm pulled to Sugar, the original Sugar Ray, and that he possibly or probably was the greatest prize fighter that ever lived. And there's the stories about they're in the military.
Pound for pound.
Yeah, he was it, and they were in the military. And it came to making the African American guys move to the back of the bus, and there's no way he's going, And Joe got along, and there's a wonderful book called Joe Louis, Black Champion in White America, about the media, and Joe Louis, and but Walker Smith was Sugar Ray's real name, and he fought under another name. He fought under Sugar Ray, but he was Walker Smith, and he to this day, I don't get a guy on like Joe Williams who really knows prize fighting, but guys would argue, who was this, who was that, and where does Joe Louis rank, and where do these different guys rank? And there was that whole period of just amazing fighters. And
Pete, I'll never forget. You've heard this all your life, being a boxing fan, is that heavyweight boxing is fixed. People will say it's like wrestling. I'll never forget. I went to Vegas I was with Ron Egloff. You remember?
Oh, sure, I know Ronnie. Sure, of course, yeah.
We sat in the fourth row of a heavyweight title defense with Larry Holmes.
Oh.
And folks, I have told people since then, whenever I would hear that stupid comment about boxing, I said, if you've ever been there, I will never forget on an uppercut, Larry Holmes lifted his opponent with one punch and literally hit him under the chin, and the guy's feet raised off the ground. We were in the fourth row so you could see it, and the guy went on his back.
Out.
And folks, it is a brutal, vicious sport.
It's a raw sport. It's probably one of the first. There was wrestling, boxing, that kind of thing. But a highlight of being the luckiest guy in the world, I got to spend an hour and a half with Jake LaMotta. We did a television show for an hour and then sat around and talked. And it was just when Raging Bull had come out and his wife was in Playboy magazine, and he went into the tank. He took a fight, or threw a fight, and we talked. I didn't bring it up when we were sitting in front of the cameras, but we talked about it, and that was the only way that he could get the title shot, because there was a couple of mob guys that they really ran boxing. And that was what their deal was, that he took this fight against this guy. And I can't remember the guy's last name. I'm going to say Collins, but that wasn't it. But the mob all loaded up on that guy because LaMotta should have walked over him. And Jake threw the fight, so the mob made all the money. So then he got a title shot. That's where he got his title shot, was against Ray Robinson. And then he fought, who was the finest piece of steel from Gary, Indiana. But those guys were so good. I mean, so great. And I don't know, So it's different. It's like the book said about baseball. After Pete Rose, baseball changed. After Joe Louis, prize fighting changed, I think.
You know what, Pete? I ain't real wild about this getting old thing, but I will tell you something. We've been blessed to see all of this stuff. So I'll let you go. I got to go be a radio star in Colorado Springs. All right.
Thanks, Mikey. All right, we need to be radio stars in Denver, but we need to sell something. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. 710 KNUS. Johnny Rodriguez. You could waltz to this. Up at me. What a great voice. We lost Johnny last night. His music means a lot. Me by. He passing through. Who comes up with stuff like that? Johnny Rodriguez. Good morning, everyone. On a Saturday, May the 10th, 2025. Brad's coming up, 79 the high, 83 for Mother's Day. Go back to the phones. We go to Dave. Hey, Dave, you're on a radio show. Good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, Peter. Hey, I wanted to hit on a little bit of all the subjects here, and I'd like to ask you if you've read this book at the end here. I think it's going to be important with the 250th anniversary of Lexington and Concord this year and then next year. And this is a little known story too. It's that involved the Revolutionary War. But I remember reading how Ali, before the Ali Liston fight, drove his bus out here to Denver to 5 Points and challenged Sonny Liston.
Called him the Bear. Yep.
To a fight, at like 2 a.m.
Oh yeah.
And
got in his head.
That guy was pretty cool. He starred in his movie The Greatest. He could do just about anything.
Indeed.
And then Pete Rose, I think his legacy is, this is something you don't want to do. I remember my father, I watched him try to get back in shape late in life, and I swore, I said, I'm going to try to stay in shape most of my life. So I kind of learned from that. And the urban cowboy thing.
Let me stand 1 second. Do you think Pete Rose belongs in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, and I think that's too bad it ate at him, and I hope he thought, maybe kids will see what I've done and
I don't think he saw
better.
it. I don't think he saw it there. I mean, I would urge you to take a look at that book entitled Charlie Hustle. In the end, I think he kind of understood what he had done, but he was, if nothing else, hard-headed.
Well, I heard the tail end of your show how he was in Vegas doing this and that, and that was a sad thing at the end, so I feel bad for the guy, but maybe, he's a teacher when it's all said and done.
Well said. Very well said.
And I remember the urban cowboy scene. I was a kid at the Mechanical Bulls and,
rode them. Yeah.
It was incredible. Johnny Cash, too. And I remember Saturday nights, I was growing up as a kid in the 70s, Hee Haw and Lawrence Welk.
Oh, yeah.
We would watch that all the time. But anyways, Johnny Cash, I didn't appreciate that stuff then, but now when you get older, like your other caller said.
Johnny, when the man comes around, have you ever heard that song?
Oh, I've been hearing some of his stuff lately, and it's just, it brings me back, and he was quite the artist.
John.
Yep.
There's so many stories about Johnny Cash too. I mean, and in the line, because we're talking about Johnny Rodriguez, but in the line where he said, "Johnny Cash helped me get out of prison." And then long before Rodriguez steals the goat, or Rodriguez stole the goat. And good. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I remember, too, how you mentioned John Travolta got us going with the Saturday Night Fever. And we kind of went as kids doing the nightclub scene from the disco Saturday night to let's go to the redneck bars tonight,
Well, remember even what was the song, Look at Them Boots? And it was the change. The change had happened. And I mean, I witnessed it. Because I was working in discos, playing tunes for money. I was a traffic reporter, and I was working at Cat Radio, just breaking in the business. And then I got to work with Bob Lee just, boom, when country music hit. And that's when it was, the original Outlaws. It was Tom Paul Glaser and Jesse Coulter and Waylon and Willie and the Burrito Brothers. Remember, I mean, there was Charlie Daniels, the Allman Brothers kind of fit into some of that stuff, and they were something else. What a time.
Yep, that was awesome.
And
So this book I wanted to ask you about, Washington's Immortals. Have you read it?
Have not. No.
Oh man, it's pretty intense. I consider myself a history buff, and I didn't realize this. This is it's written by Patrick K. O'Donnell. He's a kind of a military historian, but he wrote it's the untold story of an elite regiment who changed the course of the revolution.
Wow.
During the Battle of Brooklyn, at one point, Washington and his men, there was some 20,000 plus British and Hessians soldiers, and Washington and his men at one point were starting to lose pretty badly, so they had to escape to the fortifications along the East River. But what's known as the Maryland 400 or the Maryland Immortals, they stood up against these guys at the old stone house where Cornwallis was.
Wow.
They basically sacrificed themselves. There's a mass grave under a bunch of auto body shops.
Reading a lot about Washington was an incredibly brave man. George Washington.
Man.
Incredible brave. I mean, he is, when people start weighing and measuring presidents, he's got to be, he, Abraham Lincoln, you need to put that list of the top 3 or top 5. And he's there.
And, he was a British officer in the French and Indian War.
I thought he was a militia officer. I thought that
he did leave the Virginia Colonials, but I heard an account that he survived a battle where some 700 people on their side died. He was the only officer to survive.
Because we're going to jump here, but I don't think he was a regular officer in the British. I think he was a militia, and he idolized his brother, and his brother died, and everything that went with it. Good call, man. Well done. Thank you very, very much. We're going to get this guy back in. We get Jim in. Jim, we're coming up on time. I wanted to squeeze you in. We got about 2.5, 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Well, first of all, I do think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
Me too.
I will just say there's certain professionals that have done something and they'll never be accepted into their sports. There's a couple I can think of.
Who?
Lance Armstrong.
Oh boy, good one.
Yeah, and I think as well as another one in baseball, Jose Canseco.
Wow, very good.
Those gentlemen lied, and I think as well as Pete Rose, and they kept on going until it was proven. And I think lying in public may be the ultimate sin when
that's
once you do that repeatedly.
What a good critique. That's an excellent observation.
Yeah.
And what about when the guys were shooting the Jews and hitting home runs, beating Babe Ruth's records? I mean, when Roger Maris did it, he wasn't shooting the gas, but when those other guys were doing it, they were on the gas. What do you do with that?
Well, again, there's a point where you're not going to be forgiven, I guess, and if you continue to lie, I guess that would be it.
That's very good. That's very good. Yeah. Wow. Well said. Well, so Pete Rose, you and I agree, belongs in the Hall of Fame. He lied, and that was, according to the historians, baseball historians, he lied to the commissioner. Had he told the truth, maybe that's another lesson. Had he told the truth, he'd probably be in the Hall of Fame as we speak.
Exactly. And the same thing with Jose. He kept on lying until he wrote a book.
Yeah.
And then the book was called Juiced. And then all of a sudden, he's thinking, I think these guys were thinking they're going to make big money writing these books and telling the truth in the book.
Yeah.
And it actually backfired on them.
Yes. Yes. Isn't that the case, too? No, it's, this is a really, really great call. Well thought out. So, I don't know, but final question to you before we pull away. Do you think the time comes when Pete Rose does get admitted into the Hall of Fame?
I hope he does.
Yeah.
I think it may be a bit longer for him.
You're a great caller, man. This is a great way to end the hour. Thank you so much for your time. On the other side, as I said, over time, this guy has always made the mark. Brad Meltzer coming up. And just hang on because I don't know where it's going to go because it's up to Brad to take the show, and he always does. So stay here. I'm Peter Boyles, Radio Free Denver on a Saturday, 710 KNUS. Happy Saturday, everybody, and good morning, May the 10th, 2025. Good old 710 KNUS. The weather is beauty, 79 the high. Tomorrow, beautiful for Mom, 83 the high, 86 on Monday. Good to have you here. 303-696-1971 is the phone number. And I need to see, actually, as I was billboarding, Brad, over time, I think we've done over 10 years of radio together, simply the best. Ladies and gentlemen, he's a novelist, he's a nonfiction writer, he's a television show creator, he's a comic book author, he has a brilliant mind, and I just consider him a dear friend. Brad Meltzer is with us. Good morning, sir. Thank you for taking out the time for coming back on the show, and welcome back.
So good to be back, my friend.
I tell people about, all the years of doing this business and meeting people and who has impact and who do you remember, and you remember a lot of people, but I don't know how many shows we've done, how many times you've been in Denver, but you are an original. You're one of those guys that can do so many different things and do them all well. So that really is amazing. I know you're a comic book guy, and we've talked about learning to read with comic books, or at least I remember we talked about it. Do you remember not being able to read?
Really, this is why you're the best. I mean, this is a really good question. I don't. And maybe it's because of my love of comics. Because even when you can't read, you look at those pictures, and there's a great, I don't know if it's a Stanley quote or who said it, but it says, if you really want to know the best comic books, if you took away all the words, you'd still be able to figure out what happens.
Yes.
And that, to me, is why comics are the first ultimate medium. Because even when I didn't know the big words, you could see that Superman was good and Lex Luthor was bad.
Thank you.
You knew that the opera began right there.
I can't remember, and by the way, I did terrible in high school and barely graduated. I think it was a gift to get me out of there, but I can't remember not being able to read. And yeah, my grandma lived with us when we were little, and we would get up on both sides for my sister and I, and she read the comics in the morning. And, I started out with like reading Nancy, that kind of stuff. And
I love Nancy.
Yeah.
I love all of them. I love them all. I mean, that's the thing is, those we all want to say, when people say, what are your first, what did you read? What influenced you? We want to all have profound answers, or people will say the Bible or Moby Dick or something that will show you. But we forget that the first morality tales we all read are superheroes. They're comics.
Yes.
That's what teaches us good from bad. That's what teaches us that we hope that good will, it doesn't always feel like it, but that good will actually always, beat out evil in the end. And that's where it first comes from. It's the original play that we ever see. It's in our brain.
So who do you remember the early comics? Who do you remember reading?
The very first comic my father bought me. And my dad was a big sports guy. He wanted me to play sports. And I was good at sports, but I think just to be a spiteful kid, I was like, well, I'm not doing that if you want me to do that.
Yeah.
And I dedicated my first comic to my father because I said to him, to my dad, who always would have rather been buying baseballs, but instead bought me comic books.
Yes.
And he knew I loved it. And I remember he brought me back a Batman comic.
Wow.
Where the Joker's on the cover, and he's holding two fish in his hands, and the fish have smiles like the Joker with teeth, piranha fish.
Wow.
And it was the scariest thing I'd ever seen. I looked back, I was like 6 or 7 years old. And it's the first comic I ever remember, but I wouldn't read it because it scared me too much.
Wow.
And the second comic, which was the first comic I ever read, was Justice League of America number 150. And don't forget, I would go on later to write the Justice League because it was such an impact on me. Yeah. And I remember all the Justice League members were trapped in these prisons, and the Green Lantern's prison was yellow, so he couldn't get out of that, and Superman's prison was kryptonite, so he couldn't get out of that, and everyone was beat to them so that they couldn't get out of their one. And the Flash basically realized he can't get out of his, but he could vibrate over to Elongated Man, who was a guy who could stretch like Mr. Fantastic, and then elongated man could turn himself into a treadmill, and Flash could run on him. And basically, and Green Lantern got them out of theirs to do it in another one. And the lesson for me, Peter, was that if you team up together, anything is possible.
Yeah, no.
And I love that lesson. I've been doing my whole life. That's what The Beatles is about. That's what our new book is about. That's what Make Magic is about. It's just that power that you have when you stand together.
Wow. Everyone, this is why this guy, and he sat in studios. I've been lucky enough to have him sit in studios off, no microphones are on, and he speaks. And he talks as he talks now, but he'll take it to another level. Brad Meltzer's here in the new book on the Beatles. Let me ask you again, because I've built all this stuff up. So Donald Trump gets all this Kennedy documents that have been suppressed all these years released, and everybody says, and last week I had a guy on the show that said, Oswald did it, and there's nothing to the conspiracies. But I thought to myself, so they released these papers, there's nothing to them, then why did they hold them back all these years, Brad, if there's nothing to it?
Yeah, and listen, I love talking about this. My last
I know you did. I read the book.
Right. We talked about the JFK conspiracy.
Right.
And the JFK conspiracy was perfectly timed because the week the book came out is when they were releasing the documents. So I was very, very, wanted to watch. And I'm a board member on the National Archives Foundation. You better believe I wanted those documents open. The reason why they were held back is so many of them contained, if you've looked at them, if you've read them, they're embarrassing to us. They make us look bad. And they also they show our sources. They show who we were working with. They show you guys who are informants. They show you, listen, if you're a member of your family, father or grandfather or someone was secretly ratting for the government and was a great source, I firmly believe don't release that. Protect your sources. Protect the people who are bringing you information. And if you also look, there's some really embarrassing stuff about the U.S. government. There's things that the government, that's just like, and it's not, we were hiding this about Oswald or knew that about Kennedy. It's actually smaller than that. It's just like, it's operations during the Cold War that we were doing to attack Castro in Cuba, to make sure that his government was bad. We were doing what back then were Cold War tactics, but in the light of day, they don't make us look like, that we, they make us look a little, like we're not the great light on the hill that we want to be. And again, in that time when we're fighting that Cold War, it was, listen, whatever, any means possible, we got to win. But that's why you keep those things, behind closed doors. And I think what's really amazing to me is that all those things were released before anyone could even read them. So they release people's social security numbers, and that's why it's so. I'm not in favor of that. That's like everything else. It seems like right now, everything's like a chainsaw and everything's thrown in the wood chipper, and that's not government. That's just chaos.
I've been wading through, and there's tons of stuff that came down, and the light kind of goes on and says, well, this is sort of, and I like what you say about it's self-protective, but at the same time, if this is a nothing burger, we used to say nothing burger growing up. If this is a nothing burger, why'd you keep it back all these years? What was the point of that?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I literally thought growing up that there was some big black book, and it had who shot Kennedy, and it had who, how Elvis and Marilyn Monroe had all these great secrets about everyone.
Yeah.
And what you finally eventually realized, and by the way, you should release all the documents, because if you don't, then everyone does go, well, why aren't you releasing them? Which is a fair question to ask. The problem is, and this is just the way I think we are as a culture today, and I said this, the day that they were released, I was on a bunch of TV shows were interviewing me about this, and I said, on the day it was released, I said, I haven't even seen anything yet. It's coming out in the next few hours. But no matter what comes out, all the conspiracy people are going to say, they're still hiding something. I don't believe it. Oswald didn't act alone. And the other half of the country is going to say, see, it was nothing.
Yeah.
And everyone, it doesn't matter what's on the paper. We could have released papers with nothing on it or with everything on it, and half the country would see it one way and half the country would see the other, and that's where we are as a culture, and that's the problem. We've lost truth. We choose not to believe what is plainly in front of our face, and rather to believe what we want to believe.
No, it's all true because it wasn't going to. I guess long term it wasn't going to matter, but everybody was so excited. Everybody should say everybody, but I'm like you. I'm so drawn to that because I have this theory that that's the jumping off place for all the craziness is Jack Kennedy's murder, and from there.
Listen, JFK and Jackie, they're our first celebrity president and first lady. And I'm not talking about celebrity meaning famous, right? Everyone's famous. But I'm talking about that Hollywood, got money, got fame, have it all, the multiple houses. And, ever since JFK was killed, we've been trying to get back to that place called Camelot. And, and everyone's been kind of role-playing that. For, some people have, it's the Reagans. For some people, it's the Obamas. For others, it's the Trump. But they're all just role-playing and cosplaying. Because the real truth is, and you know this, is Camelot never existed. No, it wasn't real. It was the sheen on the outside and empty on the inside. But the one thing that JFK did better than anyone is he gave the culture hope. He was the best at that. I mean, in 1960, when he's elected, the country is divided in two. Each side hates the other. It's the most divided election in the 20th century. Yeah. And whatever side you're on, you think the other side are complete and utter morons. Does that sound familiar to you, my friend?
Yes, it does. I always said Nixon and Jack Kennedy we just did it again.
And that's exactly what we did. But the difference is Kennedy got there in his inaugural address, and half the country hates him at that moment.
Oh.
And he gets in front of everyone and says the magic words, we are in this together, we can get out of it, we can do this. And half the culture says, you know what? I'm going to give this guy a shot. And he brought us together rather than dividing us apart. And great leaders throughout history are the ones that bring us together, not the ones that pull us apart.
I'm currently reading the Secret Service, the young man who found the bullet and put the bullet on the gurney, and he's about his whole life about being assigned to the Kennedys, and he paints an incredible portrait. And I've read, much of the Kennedy literature, and there was a Jack Kennedy that a lot of people, that most of us, certainly my family, never saw, and then there was that Jack Kennedy with the tan, and he stood there and he, allegedly, blinks down Khrushchev and everything that happens with this guy. One of the things that strikes me too, and I know it's away from this, but it was all Cuba, Castro. Then he's murdered. Lyndon Johnson becomes president. We don't talk about Cuba again. We start Vietnam. And it's almost like this point where, okay, we're not going to talk about Alpha 66, Omega 7. We're not going to talk about, what was going on, the black gangs. Now we're going to talk about Vietnam. And it happened really very quickly, Brad. Do you have a thought on that?
Listen, I think it's the same thought that I have about the Gulf, when we raced in after 9/11. There's just always a need to have an enemy in the United States. It's one of our terrible flaws, right? We need to, and here's why. And by the way, the enemy we found now, let's be clear, it's ourselves. There's a reason why presidents right now and politicians want you mad. And there's a reason why cable TV wants you mad. You know why? Because angry people vote, and angry people watch television. And when you're on Facebook and it's making you scroll, you know why they give you stuff to make you mad? Because angry people will scroll even longer. And so the great enemy that funds everything now, and it's all money, right? It's keeping you in your seat, making sure you do what they want, is if they make you mad, you'll follow. And so I encourage you that if you are watching just MSNBC, or you're just watching CNN, or you're just watching Fox News, I don't care what politics you are, but if you're just watching one news source and saying, I'm an informed citizen, you are not an informed citizen.
No, I agree.
And I encourage anyone to go out and listen to the other side and look at the other side. It'll make you crazy, but you'll realize that there is another side of the universe you're missing. And right now, your side of the universe is trying to make you mad and keep you on that side.
Oh, I've never, having come through the 60s, Now we're just talking about it. When the 60s ends, is really 60s end when the war in Southeast Asia is over, Richard Nixon resigns. The 60s don't begin until Jack Kennedy's killed. And then the music changes. We go to disco. The styles change, coiffed hair. The drugs change. You know, everything changes, and then it changes again. And but at that moment, it was no longer what it was. And there seemed to be a quiet period, and then it starts right up again, doesn't it? Brad Meltzer's with us, who is my all-time favorite guest over time. I see these things in sections. I see them in not necessarily bookends, but they have a beginning and they have an end and they have a middle, do they not?
They do, and you know, one of the reasons when you look at the 60s, and I've just been studying this recently, and it goes back, you'll see where I'm going, but a new word developed in the 60s and really in the 50s it came about, but it's called teenager.
Yes.
And it wasn't that the word was invented there, but that's where it kind of took prominence.
Yes.
And what happened was when you were growing up in the 50s, in the 40s, and back, you know, going further, if your dad was a butcher, you became a butcher.
Yes.
If your dad was a baker, you became a baker. But when the suburbs began and they started building better schools for kids to go to, kids got better educations in the suburbs. And kids started saying when they had a better education, I don't want to have my dad's job. I don't want to be a butcher. And instead, they wanted to be their own thing. And then they wanted their own president, which is where JFK came from. And then they wanted their own music, which is where the Beatles came from. And obviously so many others, you know, whether it was Elvis or, you know, plenty others. When I was researching We Are The Beatles, and listen, it's a kid's book meant to, like, entertain your kids. But what I was struck by is how much that cultural phenomenon pushed. It was like you said, you know, it's an old, they say, Mark Twain quote, although Mark Twain never said it, but history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme.
It rhymes, yeah.
And you see it going around in that circle, but it kind of evolves a little bit. But you're right, we make a different enemy, but we make an enemy. We have, you know, a different music and different hairstyle, but boy, does it rhyme.
And you see that moment, and I lived through all of it, when Elvis hit, and it was huge. Elvis is an old man when the Beatles arrive. You know,
not only is of course he's the one when they go on Ed Sullivan, and we put this in the book. You know, it's a little kid's book, but I was like, this is an important point. This is why I love you. Is when they go on Ed Sullivan, it's Elvis and the Colonel send them a telegram because they know he's their hero, and they send a telegram to them saying, "Hey, man, like, amazing."
Yeah.
And it's Elvis who's in that moment. To me, that telegram is a passing of the torch.
It really does happen, and when Elvis, and like I said, when Elvis comes back, and Tom Parker turns him into a mini Frank Sinatra. That was a damn shame. They should have let him be Elvis, let him be raw, let him be Elvis, and he never was again. And these guys were raw, and they were usurpers, and I think one of the purposes of rock and roll is to make teenage kids look at their parents differently. I really do believe that. It has a purpose.
Listen, and you know what? It's a good purpose, because otherwise we'd just be stuck in the same old thing. We got to evolve. We got to change. And the Beatles, you know, what I love about the Beatles, and the reason we wrote a book about them for kids, you know, it's an illustrated kids book, cartoons. And one of the things that I love is we point out that
Brad,
we go to the Beatles as a best.
I got my music. Hang on.
Music. I hear the music. Yep.
Put them on hold, please. We'll come right back. I'm Peter Boyle, 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk station. This is it. Brad's favorite. Adam asked Brad, what's your favorite Beatles? Because he has written this new book about the Beatles. And he said, this is the song. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm always in awe. He's a novelist, a nonfiction writer, television show creator, comic book author, and he's touched me in so many different ways with his work. Brad Meltzer, we got another about 5 or 6 minutes with him. And that's your favorite Beatles song. Is that?
You know, I said it's not. It's not that it's my. I love it. It's my favorite because I used to sing it to my kids when they were born, and so I think there are better songs they've made. But for me, it just hits me right in the chest. Makes me feel like a new dad again.
You remember they did at Woodstock, and as the sun's coming up, and although it wasn't the Beatles, they sang "Here Comes the Sun."
Awesome.
No, there are. How much people have said that McCartney and John Lennon are perhaps the two greatest songwriters in our time. What do we do with that?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, you know, there's a line in the kids' book, We Are the Beatles. It says, here's the real secret of the Beatles. They made each other better. And that's the key. You know, when they meet, they're kids.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney's, 15, John Lennon's 17, George Harrison's 14 years old. And when John Lennon first meets Paul, he's like, this guy knows his song, he's pretty good, but he doesn't want to be shown up by someone. And then John Lennon says, I can either be the star or I can make the band better. So what do I choose? And he's like, mate, you want to join the band? And John Lennon sat opposite John Lennon would sit opposite Paul, and one played right hand, one played left, so the guitars faced the same direction. And then John would learn the chords upside down, take them home, relearn them, and then when they both needed to get better, George taught them and how to get better. And so each time, each one of them is trying to one up, and that's where Paul's saying this and John's saying this, and the yesterday starts as scrambled eggs. Oh my baby, how I love your legs. And then John and Paul working. Eventually, Paul's like, no, it's yesterday. Yeah. Love is such an easy game to play, not scrambled eggs.
Yeah. Eleanor Rigby, perhaps the loneliest song of all. I think, and what we were talking, we played an open song this morning because of the death of Johnny Rodriguez, and I said, these songs mean things. There's a background to our lives. Or individual lives, individual music. When you hear that song, you go someplace else, and there's where you are. I always thought that Bob Dylan was kind of the backdrop of our lives, but other people, my other friends go, no, it was the Beatles, and other friends say, no, it was Motown, and other friends say it was altogether different from that. But music has such meaning. I know we're going to come out of time here. Make magic. Talk about that, if you would, Brad, please.
Sure. I gave the commencement address at the University of Michigan last year, and there were 70,000 people in the stadium, but I was focused on one, my son, who was graduating that day. And my whole speech was about making magic. When you talk to magicians, there are only 4 types of magic tricks. Only 4. 1, you make something appear. 2, you make something disappear. 3, you take 2 things, you make them switch places. And 4, you take one thing and you turn it into something else. The hardest trick of all, transformation. And I go through all the tricks, but I get to the 3rd trick. They take in 2 things and making them switch places, and I say, here, let's talk about empathy. Because that's what empathy is, right, Peter? It's switching places with someone else, putting yourself in their shoes.
Yep.
And I said, cruelty and venom aren't signs of strength. They're signs of weakness and petty insecurity. What takes strength is showing kindness and feeling empathy. The book, went viral, and now we put a new book out that you can buy as a graduation present for anyone in your life or for someone who needs inspiration, called Make Magic.
We got 60 seconds. What would you like to tell us?
I'll tell you this. I was almost evicted when I was 13 years old.
I know.
My family was living in all the 6 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment, and this neighbor across the hall looked at what we were doing and said, I'm going to move out. I want you to take my apartment. you need to have some space. Nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. I remember her name as Mercy, but I always heard it as a kid as Mercy. And make no mistake, mercy and empathy is what she showed me. So when you're out there today, yeah, buy Make Magic, buy We Are The Beatles, but more important, show some empathy and kindness to someone else.
Until the next time, you mean so much to me, Brad. You really, really do. And
vice versa. You are one of the best in the whole industry. I come back anytime you need me, my friend.
Take care of yourself, sir. Thank you very much. Brad Meltzer, everybody. Be safe. Thank you. Now we have open lines, so do we going to take a call? Do that, 303-696-1971. I saw calls, and now calls are gone. Calls have disappeared. So what did I do? What have I done? Let's do this. Well, you got him? Is he up there? Just a punch. I don't have to punch the button. Jack, are you there?
I'm here, Peter.
There you go, Bubba. You're on the air.
Can I still call you Cranston?
You can call me just don't call me late to eat.
Late for breakfast is the saying. And in my case, just don't call me a Democrat. Do you remember when Frankie Lyman appeared on the Ed Solomon show, and we used Solomon as a joke? You remember that?
Sure. I actually met one of the teenagers, and we talked at great length about Frankie and what happened to him. And
yeah, he got into drugs. Yeah.
No, everything he did got stolen from him.
Oh, well, that's typical of that day, of that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Recording ours were never protected legally. None of them were.
Our favorite one was "I'm Not a Juvenile Delinquent." Frankie Lyman and the teenagers. See if you can find it. Yeah. We're not a juvenile delinquent, which meant...
Why Do Fools Fall in Love was probably his biggest one.
That was his hit, but I'm Not a Juvenile Delinquent was we sang that song, but go ahead.
Well, I just, I check in with you from time to time. We're contemporaries, and we're both from the East Coast, and we both read a lot, so we got a lot in common. I just called to say hello.
That's very kind. We're talking about the loss of Johnny Rodriguez, and the story of Frankie Lyman and the teenagers was so sad. And then they would see him in hanging out backstage at the Apollo trying to bum money, and he was
I used to go to the Apollo.
He was a junkie.
125th Street, 7th Avenue, I believe. I went to when they reopened the Howard Theater in Washington D.C. A guy named Petey Green took me to the open. So that was, anyhow, glad. Thank you, sir. Have a great weekend. Be safe. 303-696-1971. Danny Kaplis. Dan suggests that you choose a lawyer. I'm a Kaplis listener. Just choose a lawyer that shares your values, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much about you. Dan Kaplis, son of a cop in Chicago, is former seminarian. He's talking about it this week. Dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Danny's law firm, the official firm now, the Nuggets and the Avs, and Kaplis Law, serious firm for serious cases. He's my friend. He did great for our family. He's going to be there for you. If you need help, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit Kaplis Law, DA at CAPLISlaw.com, CAPLIS.com. If you need help, make the call. All right, so where do we go? We go to Michael. Michael, you're on a radio show. Good morning, and thank you.
Peter, it's so great to talk to you again, and I just wanted to, comment on your interview with Brad. I think that was incredible, and I watched part of his graduation speech he was talking about, and he made a couple of interesting points I wanted to kind of bring up. He said, making something appear, bringing out the best version of yourself, switching two things, emphasizing empathy by stepping into someone else's shoes, transforming one thing into something else, embracing continuous change and transformation in your life. And, what was interesting, he was talking about how, before the speech, there was all these pro-Palestinian, young people protesting. And then when the speech was over, it transformed that whole audience, because I think it's like, what he's professing here is these universal principles, empathy for everyone. And I think it's like, even when someone wants to make a statement, if you're professing something everyone can get behind, I mean, there's no reason to be upset. And also, it was interesting, you were talking about how the mainstream media tries to kind of, drum up discontent a lot of times. You look at the algorithms, they put out things on social media for, they know younger people are going to be watching, that they know are going to, get them upset, that are going to evoke a reaction from them. And so it's like, they know what they're doing a lot of times, these
of course,
mainstream media outlets.
Of course.
But I think it's just like, it's, I'm not surprised, young people are so receptive of, what he's
but they've
talking
also,
about. And I think,
but young demographic, under 30, 25, they've rejected the mainstream. They don't read newspapers. They don't listen to, I don't know what they listen to. I don't know what, but it's all computer. It's on the internet. It's what they do. And I've said this probably too many times, the two biggest losers in November were Heritage Media and the Democratic Party. They both just got washed away, and nobody buys in anymore. And
exactly.
And cable, as Meltzer said, cable's now become, and I've always said it becomes tribal, my tribe, your tribe. And talk radio is totally tribal, and it's destroyed it. And I mean, there's so many things going on, but something, it's Hegelian, because something will emerge and will take its place and become dominant. And podcasting became something great, and now even the pods are kind of in trouble right now. So, watch what happens. And one thing you can always be sure of is change.
Yeah. Well, I think what he's doing, though, or at least trying to do, is make history, have a broader appeal to a younger audience.
Oh, sure.
And younger people, because, today it's like, how can you get younger people off of their phones? And, you brought up talk radio. Well, you look at the demographics of talk radio and who they're targeting with their commercials. It's not younger people.
No, well.
And so I think in order to bring back the younger people, you have to, target them. You have to talk about things that they're going to care about. And I think, that's why podcasts are successful. But, the problem is a lot of young people don't take the time to look at the substance of things. I mean, when you look at talk radio, it's substance, right? You've said before,
not really.
You're the master of talk radio. You've had such an illustrious career. I mean,
lucky.
It's like,
But real quick, there's.
ahead.
I mean, I listened to something the other day. I sat in a car and listened to it. This guy was saying that the sun doesn't cause cancer, but it's sunscreen that causes cancer. And I'm going, well, stop. You're allowed to say that on the air. Yeah, I guess you are. But a lot of things you can't do that now are being done, and they're being done, and now people are getting sued over it, and it's just crazy. I'm going to jump. Appreciate the call. Love it very much. All right, let's go to Dino, my boy in Arkansas. Dean, man.
How you doing? I'll be up in town. I'll be up there in a couple of weeks in June.
Cool.
Maybe we'll run into then. Yeah, I just want to talk before I get to Rose and all that. It was a great show the last 2 weeks. I hope you got the chance a few weeks ago when I suggested you ought to watch that Steve McQueen special. Just Google on YouTube.
I did.
He does everything you want to know his entire career. Just go, Steve Oh, beautiful. Anyway, listen, on boxing, I don't know where to begin with all that. That entire golden age, they were tougher people. They could have fought 25, 30 rounds if they had to go that way. That's just the way it is.
Well,
I remember
they would have like 35, 40 fights before they would even get, listed. Yeah.
Yeah, Sugar Ray had 101 before he
Yes,
had.
yes, he did.
Yeah,
Yes, he did. Yeah.
He was when he left Detroit and he moved to New York. I remember old Zale, Tony, because my father's locker was
the
with him.
finest piece of steel from Gary, Indiana. Tony Zale.
Yeah, and he moved. He worked as like you did. He worked in the
worked in the mill.
He worked as a cinder snap in Illinois Steel.
That's who he
and
was.
He trained so hard in the gym. Sam Pym and Art Winch were his managers. They managed Barney too.
Barney
and they
Ross.
used to ask him.
Barney
Yeah,
Ross.
they used to ask. Well, that's what you are. My father's same neighborhood as him.
Yeah.
Anyway, they used to ask Zale all the time, why you train so hard? And he said the obvious. He goes, beats working in the steel mill. But anyway, he fought a guy named Al Hostak in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
He won half the title. Then he goes back to New York, and they beat a Georgie Abrams, knocked him out in the ninth round. I talked to him. Well, 9 days later, Pearl Harbor happened. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And that WBA, the association at the time, if you were an American fighter and you were a champion, they froze your title. They wouldn't have to fight until the war. They didn't know it ever. So he joined the Navy. He's on a ship, and he reads about this story about Graziano back in America all the time, and he knew he had to fight him eventually. So he had the trilogy. And then the French Tiger, what was his name? He got Marcel Cerdan beat Zale
he was killed
for the title.
He was killed.
Well, he lost LaMotta, beat him for a middleweight title. He couldn't answer the 11th round. He separated his shoulder.
Jake could not come out of the stool, off the stool. No, that's true.
Yeah. But then I think skill-wise, I think in the rematch he got trying to.
Let me put him on. I got to do this. I got the pause coming. Stick you on hold. Come back. Lines are jammed. Palestinians coming up 7:10. KNUS on a Saturday. I just wanted to play this. Richie Havens. Here Comes the Sun. Lone winter. This was Woodstock. Sun's coming up. Max Yeager's farm. So the sun. Here we go. And I say, I did a show with Richie Havens, and when he fretted, if you know about guitar playing, he fretted with his thumb. He didn't fret with his fingers. He turned his thumb almost like, it was hard to explain to watch him play, but he fretted. He had these big hands, and he would turn his left over the neck of the guitar and fret with it. Doing the Beatles, Here Comes the Sun. Good morning, everybody. It's Saturday, May the 10th, 2025. Beautiful weekend coming. We'll go back. We had callers on hold. Let's go back to Dino. Dino, you were saying something. We got knocked away. Go ahead.
Yeah, Richie Havens just passed away a few years ago.
I knew that, too. Yeah, boy, he was a great interview. He was a great, and he'd play and sat and talk, told stories. Wow.
Yeah. Well, also, it's based on as far as some of the boxing stuff. I thought Marcel Cerdan was still he probably would have beat Lamont in the rematch, but we never know. He died in the crash.
Well, that was called that was the middle. It was the middleweight curse, and that's what it was called at the time. And
well, what was I say? Well, he had a wife and 3 kids at a big successful pig farm in Morocco or whatever, and he's out the whole town to travel the world with Edith Piaf. So, and he still wrote about it.
Do you know how much I love Edith Piaf?
She's a great singer. Poor died. She looked like she was in her 90s when she passed away. She was only 47. She was married to a Greek at the end. Yeah.
Did you ever see the picture of her funeral when her lover's about 30 years old and he's in a trench and he's standing and it's raining and they're burying Edith Piaf and her lover is standing there. When she was she had a song called "We Regret Nothing." And it becomes the code of the Legion. And as the Legion marches out of Algeria, swaggers, when they marched, they swaggered. And they sang "We Regret Nothing." After
she was a great singer.
Oh.
She was great.
Oh.
She carried France all through World War II even. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Edith Piaf.
Even the VCs tried to stop it. A lot of those VC members try to change their minds and go back to the French resistance, but
absolutely.
They weren't. Different story.
Anyway. I'm with you. I'm a big Edith Piaf fan. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That was fun. But anyway, it was great to see all of them. Zell, you heard about you're from Pittsburgh. You knew Fritzy Zivic was a big hero of that town over there.
My dad knew Fritzy Zivic. They all grew up in this, and it was Billy Kahn, and it was Fritzy Zivic, and it was all of those guys. My dad, every Irishman in Pittsburgh claimed that they were at the Garden when Billy fought the bomber. Yeah, and they couldn't have been. They couldn't. It was like
they would have made tickets sold.
Yeah.
Well, he fought a guy, Milt Air. He fought a big Chicago, fighter, Dubuque, Iowa, Milt, but he trained out of Chicago, the same stable, drafted his gym. He fought him at the Coliseum, I guess. In '39, he got knocked out in the 8th round, and had a rematch in the Pittsburgh Civic Auditorium the very next year, in 1940, and Zivic knocked him out in 8th.
Fritzy,
he could do everything.
I would see Billy. We saw Fritzy when our boxing team, Billy's son, was, and whenever time we meet, I'll tell you a story. I can't do it on air. My brother was good. I wasn't any good. My brother was really good, and these are young guys. We all boxed at the Hebrew Y, and so they bring Billy in, and Stanley asked Billy, "Give the boys some encouragement." Well, what do you think? And he had Billy had a partner named Ken. His name was Divins, Joey Divins, and the Argosy magazine wrote an article called "The Toughest Barroom Brawler in America," and it was about Joey. And so we did a show one time. We did a show. I got a phone call from Pittsburgh. It was from Joe. They got back. His son called me. Best conversation. We talked about Joey Dims. I used to see Joey and Bill. I used to see him in a bar, and they'd come in and the whole place would get quiet. I mean, they were They were
the greatest story you ever said on Con, because it was written in the Sports Illustrated articles over the years. He beat up his his boyhood school bully. He always once he recognized him on the street. Great story.
3 days before he's got a fight, right? And the guy and the old man lived there. They all grew up there. My dad grew up on a place called Meadow Street, and it was an Irish conclave in Pittsburgh. All the mix are living there, and Billy spots the guy. He fought his father-in-law. His name was Greenfield Jimmy somebody, and he and Billy got into it, and the whole family, they were all like. But he said he spots the kid, and it was like in Goodwill Hunting. Remember when they're driving around the car and they spot the guys and they all jump out and beat on them?
That was the beginning of the movie. That was the beginning, towards the beginning. Yeah,
that was a great movie. And they said that so Billy sees the guy. He's away from the money fight. He goes out and the guy says,
well, he knew he could.
Yeah,
without an effort. That's why.
But beat him up. Yeah, beat him up in the street.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, not totally switching everything. I know people thought you had a great thing about Pete Rose. I got a lot of his baseball cards. I remember those times. You know, he probably will get in the future, posthumously and all that, because what he did on the field, whatever. But when he became a manager of the Reds in '84,
yes, he did.
My father would look at the dinner table. I'm just saying, when he did, my father would bring him over to the table. He looked at the box score. They knew something was up with the Rose. He was playing almost the entire roster every game in the box score.
Real quick.
He bet on his team to win so much. Yeah,
yes.
He bet on the team so much to win, he started playing all the players. That's when people started getting suspicious.
All right, let me ask you, does he belong in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, what he did on the field, even if they want to put an asterisk. Yeah, I knew Alex Karras. I met him once before he passed. And they're all in. You're right. Gambling is gambling, pal. That's just life.
Take care. Love you.
There's nothing greater than cashing a ticket. Take it easy.
Thanks, bud. All right, we go quick. Marcus, in Aurora, we have about 3 minutes. You're on the radio show. Good morning.
Good morning, Peter.
Hey, man. Good morning to you.
If it was not for comic books, I would not learn how to read.
Yeah, I learned to read. Yeah, that's what we did.
It's so true.
Absolutely.
Sergeant Rock and
the Howlin' Furies.
Cowboy Sam and the books and everything. Yeah, that's so true.
When the machine guns went off, did it go Buddha, 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 or Buddha, Buddha, Buddha?
Both. Buddha, Buddha, Buddha.
Or Buddha, 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 Buddha. Huh? Sergeant Rock and the Howlin' Furies.
Yeah.
We had arguments.
Remember, yeah.
We had arguments about that. When the machine guns went off, did he say Buddha, 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 or Buddha, Buddha, Buddha?
Well, usually it was Buddha, Buddha, Buddha.
I was a Buddha guy myself, but the other guy said no, because it was B-U-D-D-A, B-U-D. Remember that?
Yeah.
And it was on big bold letters.
That's what we're talking about.
And they all had Thompsons and stuff, and we'd argue. Like we were, I don't know, in 10, 11, 12 maybe. What he does? It's Buddha. No, man, it's Buddha. Like, okay.
That's right.
They were arguments. That's serious arguments.
Yeah, you're getting in a fight over this.
Oh, absolutely. You get a fight about over anything. But, there's only one way to settle this. How many times you heard that? Oh, man. Oh, man.
All-Star Wrestling time, buddy.
Big time. Big time.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm good. Real quick as I'm on the wall. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just because it's true. It's not because people are stupid. I didn't want to be in school. Back in the day, they had card catalogs and that.
Hated school.
If it wasn't for, automotive shops or some arts and stuff like that, I'd never make it.
I was a car shop guy. It was Forbes Trail Technical School. Yeah.
Yeah.
All you did was like then smoke cigarettes. Sure, that was like car shop.
Yeah, they always sponsored the school.
Yeah, all the hoods were all the hoods were in there with you. All the hoods.
Oh hell yeah, you were cool.
Oh, remember, grow up, be a no good hood.
Nobody messed with you.
Well, no, because you hung around with guys that nobody messed with. Take care.
Yeah.
Man. Take care. Thank you. All right. So, on the other side, we've had these folks with us before. It's been a long time. A lot is happening right now in Gaza. Palestinians will join us. I know everybody's upset. This is the one place in town they get to sit and talk. This is what talk radio should be. It is a Saturday morning, May the 10th. Everyone, put on your hats. We return right after this. Saturday morning again, everyone, and thank you so much. It is May the 10th. Tomorrow's Mother's Day. 303-696-1971 is our phone number. We'll get to the calls. The weather, again, 79, the high today, 83 for Mother's Day, and on Monday, 86 degrees. It's been a great show, and welcoming back into the studio, and our second guest is running a little bit behind. He will be here, Professor Rob Prince, but she is a physician, and her name is Reema Wahdan, and she has been with us before talking about Palestine and Palestinians. It's good to see you, and happy Mother's Day tomorrow. And
thank you.
Thank you. Move up real close to the microphone.
Yeah.
Just for grins, you were on the show a couple months back?
Yeah.
What Denver media outlet has given you a voice in those, say, last 65 days?
You know, there's just actually one.
Who?
Which would be Channel 4 and you.
Yeah.
Those are the only two that are actually giving us a chance, and there's actually people protesting all the other media outlets because
we're already hearing it.
Yeah.
Why? And who at Channel 4, because I don't know, who at Channel 4 is doing or letting you have a voice?
There's a couple reporters there that are like actually in tune with what's going on and giving current coverage, especially when there's things that are hitting national or international wave airline. So Channel 4, Michael Abeda has done great coverage. Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. So
yeah.
I don't watch me and TV. Or why?
It's an intentional attempt to silence at least the Palestinian voice, so that people don't really know what's going on. The large American population don't know what's happening behind the scenes, and we're now sitting 52,800 dead. Yeah. Of Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip and West Bank, and an intentional attempt to starve the population, violation of countless international laws, and a genocide happening in our backdrop to the U.S. dime.
You know, when I was prepping I knew I was going to have you on the show, and I'm going to write about it this week as well. But you had said, and I don't know where the truth lies, that now the Israeli occupation of Gaza, and Netanyahu said we're staying and we're not going to go. So there were the stated goals, and I pulled all this up: destroy Hamas, free the hostages, ensure Gaza no longer poses a threat, and return displaced residents of northern Israel. Those are the four stated Netanyahu positions. And until that time, hey, Doc, have a seat in the office. Good to see you. Thank you. You too, sir. Speak to those, because those are the stated by Netanyahu, these are the reasons we're staying.
So we were hoping, at least to the first point of countering Hamas, we thought there was going to be a good, solid ceasefire that would result in both parties coming to the table and being able to, at least provide the transition of hostages. There was a violation from Israel's side. Then we go to the second point, which was...
Well, I'm trying to boil Netanyahu's stated goals. One was destroy Hamas. Mm-hmm. Right. One is to free the hostages. To ensure, I'll just read this to you, to ensure Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel, and return displaced residents of northern Israel. First of all, welcome to the show. Professor Rob Prince is here.
Either way.
Either way, okay. And he's from GSIS at DU. Good to see you, sir.
Retired from there.
Yes. Regardless, it's good to see you again, sir. Thank you.
Good to see you too.
So that's that was the stated reasons to now for Netanyahu to say now we're staying for these reasons. Mm-hmm. So, and jump in anytime anybody wants.
Well, that is what he's proposed, but it's actually even different from what Trump has proposed, the Trump administration has proposed, and what others have proposed. So, and he's basically putting forth, if you like, what one could call the most key Israeli demand, the demands that Israel would like to see. And everything starts with ending the genocide. That's the beginning. Ending the genocide, beginning aid, and then the main focus at this point is really about the immediate situation, bringing in aid. I mean, we have people starving now in Gaza. And in terms of the broader framework is not going to come just from Netanyahu. It's going to come from others. We have to look at what the Palestinians are calling for. We have to look at what the United States, what other major players are calling for. And this is not, his proposal is very weak and self-serving, is the best way I could put it. It's not a starting point for moving towards peace.
When we go back to October 7th, the jump off the Palestinians, and that is not the primary cause. I mean, and to start all of this up again is what happened.
Well, of course, there's October 7th, but there's a history before October 7th. It's not as if this conflict began with October 7th. For as serious as October 7th was, it depends on how far you want to go back. 100 years, the Nakba of the late 40s, or the 1967 war. For the most part, the framework of the international community has been the 1967 war. Yes. And the displacement that took place there. So while the events of October 7th,
for the folks that don't know what the Nakba means.
Oh yes, okay.
Explain it, please.
The Nakba was the expulsion of somewhere between 750,000 and 800,000 Palestinians from their home in 1948 as a result of the war in which Israel was founded. And,
UN proclamation happened?
Yes. UN proclamation was essentially for a two-state solution at that time, yes.
How are they going to do it in 48? I mean, I've read as much as perhaps I'm not in your league, but how was the proposal for a two-state solution going to be? Harry Truman, Joe Stalin, how were they going to do that?
It was going to be organized through the United Nations Security Council.
I know, that's why I brought them up.
Yes. It never got that far because the war broke out. But there was the beginning of a framework, and we have to remember about these frameworks, how they came into being. Yes, they did go through the Security Council, and they passed. But there was never any Palestinian participation in making the decision. So this, from the very beginning, was a solution that was imposed on the Palestinians.
Who represented anyone in the Arab world in that moment? Was there anyone that represented interest of Arabs or interest of Palestinians?
In principle, yes. In fact, hardly. Okay.
Who was at the table?
The big ones were Egypt, Saudi Arabia, yes. Yeah, no, they were there. They were at the table, definitely. Their weight at the table, didn't amount to much.
But the British were occupying Egypt at the time.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
And the Saudis were the Saudis.
Yeah. All right. But the way the whole thing was set up, again, just to go back a little bit, during World War II, the British armed a Jewish or Zionist contingency. They participated in some of the fighting, and they were armed to the teeth. Palestinians and Arab participants were not permitted to get involved in that. So when the war ends, Israel is already militarily prepared. In those days, a modern military force against a Palestinian population that basically had nothing in comparison militarily, and it was pretty one-sided war.
Were the Palestinian people told to leave because you can come back?
When we get into that, we get into the different narratives of how people look at it.
Legitimate questions.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
Yes. Originally, they were told that, and immediately thereafter, they were denied that.
Who told them that?
That came from the United Nations, to my knowledge.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
But what again? I was at what right? You know,
The right to return.
Right.
Yeah. Did you have to say that?
I mean, talking about 48 is important.
Yes.
Because people forget that what happened here is the expulsion, and to use, if you like, a more common term, ethnic cleansing of 750,000 Palestinians. Not only that, but even the agreement that was set up by the United Nations, okay, when the war ended, that agreement had already been violated. Yes. That Israel had taken, the Zionist movement had taken far more of the land than had been allocated to it by the United Nations.
Let me reset who's here. Professor Rob Prince is here. Listen to my mind, and Dr. Reema Wahdan is here. I'm slipping away, and talking about what I think you could say the plight of the Palestinians, and it is one of those moments that if you read, and it goes back into the First World War, and it goes back before that, and it goes back, and you could say it's Old Testament, it's Torah, it's biblical, it's Quran, it's, yeah, I know you thumb your thumbs, and I do that too, because
well, we do hear that, but it's literally, it's a modern conflict. It's a modern, in fact, to put it in its broader sense, it's the last step of what we could call European colonialism in the Middle East and Africa.
I say that now about Kashmir and about India, and
good for you.
It's the British again.
Yeah, the British left us with so many problems.
Anywhere they've been.
We can't blame it all on Washington, D.C.
I say anywhere the British have been in the world, problems exist today.
Yes. And we're still trying to sort out the problems that they created with Sykes-Picot.
Yeah, Sykes-Picot does that. And the proclamations do it, but they did it everywhere. They did it in 1947, partition in India.
And nobody talks about that, and not to get off on it. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
But how many people died in the movement of Muslims into Pakistan and Hindus into India? Millions of people died.
Bangladesh.
Yes.
What used to be West Pakistan.
Right. But let's get back to
but I guess what I'm saying is that this is a universality of kicking the colonials out of the world, whether it's in sub-Saharan Africa, Saharan Africa, whether
that's correct.
And it was time for the British and
there's another aspect to this in terms of the historical stuff that I would want to raise. And again, people get a little nervous when I talk about it this way, but Israel, like Algeria, like South Africa, are examples of what are settler colonialism. And if you want to understand, for example, what's happening today between Israel and the Palestinians, you could do far worse than looking at what happened to the French in Algeria.
I agree.
Okay, I see them as quite similar.
Very much so.
And think about it. When the Algerian people rose up and began their armed struggle, what the French did, the obscenities that the French committed against the Algerian population are hard to believe. And it's like this wounded beast syndrome. Colonialism is at its last breath.
I agree.
And what comes out is of such a negative and destructive element, and that's what we're seeing with Gaza. Yes.
The French are kicked out of what they called French Indochina after Dien Bien Phu. It was the Legion.
Correct.
And the Paras. Where do they go? Algeria.
Yes.
And what happens? I just came across something about a year and a half ago in my reading. The British had something called the Black and Tans that they used in Ireland against the liberation movements in Ireland. And I'm reading the history of the Tans, and they said, well, what happened to the Black and Tans after comes the partition? They sent the Tans to Palestine.
I'm not surprised.
I did not know that. That's where the Tans went. British moved them to use as a police force, and the same thing happened to them in Kenya under Kenyatta. It happened to them in our country.
We're seeing something similar today. Some of the same elements that were involved in the overthrow of Libya. They wind up in Syria.
Sure.
And then we find them on fighting with the Israelis in Gaza. There are forces there are also U.S. mercenaries that are fighting there.
But they were called the black gangs.
Yes.
And that's where they
Right.
were off budget, and you didn't know who they were, and
There's so many similarities, historical that
repetitive.
Yeah, right.
Repetitive.
Yes, in some ways.
But do you see, Professor, that in these conflicts, that the United States of America, our forefathers and foremothers, we kicked the bastards out.
We did.
And so when we did, well, what's wrong with somebody else kicking the bastards out as well? And the bastards were Belgians, and they were French, and they were British, and tragically, in many places, the United States kind of takes their place.
That's pretty much what happened at the end of World War II.
Yeah.
Now we did it a little bit differently, but like when we hear the talk about Israel here in the mainstream media from our government, it usually tends not to talk about geopolitical considerations, i.e., why is the United States supporting Israel? We get the typical answers. Similarities in culture, democracy, whatever. But there are geopolitical considerations, and the geopolitical considerations have to do with controlling the region.
Absolutely.
Using, I say these things. Try to be objective about it. I've once heard Israel referred to as America's aircraft carrier.
I've heard that many times. Read it.
All right.
But so was Saddam.
Up to a point, he was.
Yeah.
Well, Saddam is a different story. He's like the CIA agent that turns on us afterwards, so we turn on him because that's what he was.
He was our guy.
Yes, he was our guy up to a certain point.
And then he wasn't.
So was Noriega.
I was going to bring that up. So was Manuel Noriega.
All right. So where do we?
So were the Diem brothers.
And so where do we put Netanyahu? In that, do we put him in the same category? I
don't know if I would. I don't know if I would do that. I don't know if I would put Netanyahu there. But we had Sigmund Rhee. We had all these different prop ups, and on the other side of the wall, Joseph Stalin and Khrushchev. They're Walter Ulbricht and all these different characters. They're propping them up, and that becomes the vice.
Well, it's a rough world out there.
Yes, it is.
All right.
Yes,
so
it is.
All we're really looking for here, quite frankly, is a modicum of justice, the end of a genocide that's taking place.
What happens to the Jews coming after the Shoah? What happens?
All right, sure.
We're going to take a break. Let me do this. It's time to break. They get no voice. Professor Rob Prince is here, and Dr. Reema Wahdan is here, and I'm Peter Boyles, and this is 710 KNUS, and the lines are lit up, and we'll get to people, and let's do a turnaround. 79 the high and 83 Sunday. Hang on, 710 KNUS. Morning, everybody. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. Tomorrow's Mother's Day. Weather's going to be great. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Let me tell folks, and we have, again, jam lines. We'll get to the guest, and we'll get to the phones where they're going to be with us. Tell you about David Ellis, and again, if you're looking for a Mother's Day gift and you're running around hard right now, head to David's right now. David Ellis Jewelers, and get a fortune of cash, again, to secure an appraisal from David from all the valuables you have tucked away in your home. And this is true, and let me share the reasons to see David, just in case you don't have a Rolex watch, rare coins and silver tea sets. But go in and look for gifts real quick. David's working today. They're there. They're open. See David Ellis for the most meaningful gift-giving occasions. David Ellis Jewelers, and just the right items, just the right price. Special people that mean the most to you. An antique watch, and learn to speak, an emerald pendant, a gold necklace, a diamond ring. This trusted jeweler has been buying precious metals and antiques here in Colorado for decades. Dazzling cases filled with hundreds of new and used pieces for that loved ones will treasure. Visit David Ellis Jewelers today. See for yourself. Look for the black awning on the corner of 3rd and Clayton. He's there now. 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek. Explore David Ellis Jewelry. You'll get great deals. See my friend. Call my friend David Ellis. 303-322-8779. 303-322-8779. And tell David that Peter Boyle sent you. In studio, and we haven't seen these folks for a couple of months, Dr. Reema Wahdan is here. She's a physician with the Colorado Palestinian Club. And also Professor Rob Prince is here, former lecturer, International Studies, GSIS at DU. The issue, of course, is what is taking place now in Gaza. So the Israelis invade Gaza, and we were talking politics and talking, the movement against colonialism in the world. Let me ask, who's the rightful owner of Gaza Strip? I'll go to you, Doctor. Yours.
Palestinians.
Palestinians. Is there another claim? What do you think is going to happen? Israel's completed this 12 September 2005, and the West Bank is administered by Israel by varying degrees of Palestinian authority. The Gaza Strip is currently under control. Is it under control of Hamas? Is it under control of who knows, or is it under control of Israelis?
Right now?
Yes.
Who knows? To be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, technically Hamas, but...
Yeah.
Well, when we talk about Gaza, a number of years ago, it was described as an open-air concentration camp. I think that now it's a killing field. Mm-hmm. What Israel appears to be up to at this point is to finish what they hope to start. That is the ethnic cleansing, the complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And at the same time they're doing that, they've already started doing similar things in the West Bank. I don't remember the exact number, but 50,000 Palestinians living in the West Bank have been expelled from their house. Those that are closer to the border with Jordan.
Where are these people going to go? You're shaking your head.
I mean, like my sister-in-law's house was taken, and she's in the West Bank.
So,
they're forcibly expelled. They have to just live with other people, neighbors, families, relatives, whoever will take them in. Yeah. They're homeless. It really goes into that.
And it creates that much more chaos and confusion. They're basically put in refugee camps that are already overcrowded. If we're talking about the West Bank, and in the West Bank. So most of the attention of the world is on Gaza, but what's happened in the West Bank, armed conflict in the West Bank, and ethnic cleansing, the destruction of homes and property.
Why is Gaza so important?
It's one of if we're going to say two-state solution, you have the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Right. It's just one more step of ethnic eradication of Palestinians to dismantle the power and stability, and then they're going to concentrate on the West Bank and eradicate Palestinians from that land. It really goes down to that.
Historically, if anybody wants to, indeed, I don't want to go there, but control the Middle East, you have to control Gaza. It's that part of it's on Middle Eastern empires and conquering Egypt or any of the Nile Valley power bases. It's Gaza. Gaza has to be done. The history of Gaza, is it the key to the war and peace in the Middle East? Many people I've read say, yeah, that is the key. Doctor, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Gaza was the first place that the British liberated from the Ottomans after World War I.
Yes.
Gaza is strategic. There's no question that it's strategic. Yes. But I want to put it in a different kind of focus, and that's this. Today, in 2025, how important is the seizure of a little bit more land in a global economy where territory is less important than trade, commercial relations, i.e., the whole notion of territorial expansion, of ethnic cleansing, to take a few more. It's a very small area.
It's a very small place.
Yeah, itself is ludicrous. So we have to ask, why is this going on, and why did Israel, a nation that economically speaking is pretty strong in many, why does it need Gaza? The answer is it doesn't. It doesn't. So it's stuck. It's stuck in this kind of this illusion, this religious illusion that it had of greater Israel, that comes from obviously the far right within Israeli society.
Would this be going on right now if October 7th had not occurred?
Yeah, it would have been. It would
sooner
have happened.
or later.
Yeah, it was.
Soon.
I mean, 75 years. It was just continuation.
It's you believe it to be incremental, that step by step.
Well,
this is just catapulting it.
70 years of negotiations that have led to nothing for the Palestinians, except what? I mean, I remember after the 67 war, so let's say 69, 70, there were 100,000 settlers in the West Bank and Gaza. Today, what's the number? I don't even know anymore. 800,000, i.e., every peace negotiation up until now has led to more settlement, more dislocation of Palestinian homes. At the same time, the rhetoric, and not just from the Israelis, but from the U.S. government and others, is, we're going to have this peace settlement, and the peace has never come. So some of the responsibility for this conflict has to lie on great powers, and particularly, given its influence and power in the world, on the United States.
Ready to start the phones? All right, here we go. We'll start. Sandy, lines are jammed. Sandy, you're on a radio show. Our guest, again, these are folks that are pro-Palestinian. We'll let it go at that. Sandy, you're on the air.
Good morning, Peter, and to your guest. Perfect timing on this, because I was just wondering. I have been looking for someone, and I think your two guests can answer these two questions, is what is the difference between Judaism and Zionists? And also, when Henry Kissinger, there was something about the Brentwood agreements, treaties, or whatever. If they can answer those things for me, and I'll take it off there.
No, just stay there, because you may want more.
All right.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I'll do the Kissinger thing first, because it's very interesting. It's good you raised that, because a lot of people don't talk about it. But actually, what Kissinger was able to do in 1973, 1974, and the peace agreements that he was able to construct. But basically, there was a lot more to it than that. The heart of the matter was that Kissinger basically agreed that oil-producing countries in the Middle East should control their own oil. All right, which was the nationalist thrust in the 70s and 80s. Who controls the oil? But in exchange for controlling the oil, they needed to invest in the United States, and they agreed. So buying dollars, buying weapons, and basically, this was a deal that has lasted until now.
But OPEC arrives, and oil becomes a weapon.
Yes. Well, He understood that. He actually accepted the creation. He's a realist, okay?
Very much so.
In at least the following sense. He saw this nationalist movement in the Middle East. He saw it as a danger to U.S. interests because we controlled a lot of that oil. So there was an exchange that went on. Okay, we, the United States, will agree that you can more or less control your oil more than you did in the past. But in exchange, you invest in U.S. Treasury bonds. You sell the oil to who we suggest you sell the oil to. You invite U.S. construction companies to come in and build. So basically, these dollars are going out to the Arab world and coming back.
That's right.
Where it came to that part of the agreement that dealt with Israel and Palestine, he basically kicked the ball to the future. And he created an agreement which he knew wouldn't go anywhere. But for the moment, it neutralized the conflict. It was brilliant from an insidious point of view.
And he's doing the same thing with the Chinese. He does the same thing with Li Duc-to.
That's right.
He's a master.
Well, he was. I think of him as, quote, an evil genius, but he was. We don't have anybody, at least that I'm aware of, in power like Kissinger.
He was one of a kind.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah. And you want to know the difference between Zionism and Judaism. Zionists, well, they come out of Herzl and the Zionist movement.
Yeah, like the Judaism is a religious doctrine, and I'm just going to pull up my notes. Like, it encompasses beliefs, practices, ethnic and cultural traditions rooted in the Torah and the Jewish teachings. And then Zionism is a political movement that began in the 19th century aimed at establishing a national homeland, and it is rooted in nationalism, not religious doctrine.
But at the same time, the Herzl and the original Zionist movement, the pogroms are taking place, the Dreyfus trials, everything is going to take place, and they have nowhere to go. And one of Herzl's close friends is Lord Rothschild, and that's the setup for the.
Well, let's talk about Herzl, okay?
All right.
And you mentioned the Dreyfus case.
Right.
I am told, although I have never been able to prove it, that Dreyfus was a relative. Okay.
Of Herzl's?
No, of mine.
Oh, of yours. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm very proud, if it's possibly true. That being said,
for the people to know that it was a big in Europe.
Right.
Dreyfus was Jewish.
A Jewish officer in the French army who was accused of having been responsible for France losing the Franco-Prussian War of 1870.
They put him on trial.
They put him on trial, and they sent him to South America to prison. Okay. On his trial, who came to cover his trial? Theodor Herzl.
Yes, he did.
And Herzl was a journalist for an Austrian paper, kind of like their version of the New York Times.
Yes.
And Herzl is watching this trial, and he concludes from this trial that anti-Semitism in Europe is so powerful that there's no way to overcome it, and that the only option for Jews was to establish a state of this. All right. So let's just, one more thing about this at this point, Peter, and it's this. The problem that Herzl was looking at was anti-Semitism in Europe, not in the Middle East. All right? And so his solution...
But he needed to get folks out of
Judaism, like everything else in the world in the 1890s, is in crisis. And there are options. Jews are faced with options. One option is Zionism. The other option is, well, let's overthrow these right-wing anti-Semitic governments.
But they were royal families then. I mean, this is prior to the Bolsheviks.
Yes. But Judaism it finds itself in the same crisis as everybody else. One of the options was, let's create a state somewhere else for Jews. The other option...
They thought about Africa, too, did they not?
They thought about Western Kansas.
Yeah, that's very true.
Now, needless to say, Western Kansas did not have the appeal of Palestine biblically. All right. But the main point, and it's just building on what Reema has said, is Zionism is a political movement of the Jewish people. It is not a religion. It's a political movement. And Judaism is just a religion.
And you don't have to be, you can be a Jew and not be a Zionist, or you can.
Yes, that's correct.
And there's plenty of.
With difficulty, but you can do it.
And there are Christians who would call themselves Zionists.
And in this country, you don't hear that much about it, but I'm beginning to wonder if far more powerful than the Jewish Zionists are the Christian Zionists here in the United States. And, John Hagee's grouping.
Exactly, because in the final days.
Yeah, well, they have their, Messianic view.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I got a minute. Is that a good answer? Because we got a break.
All right. I hope so.
Most excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
All right, everybody hang on a second. We'll take a quick turnaround. In studio with me is Reema Wahdan and Professor Rob Prince, and 303-696-1971. We have, for the first time, there's two lines open. 79 the high today, 83 on Sunday, Monday 86 degrees. All right, ready, Adam? Let's take a turn. Lines are all lit up again. 710 KNUS. Good morning, everyone. It is the day before Mother's Day. It is May the 10th, 7:10 KNUS on a Saturday. I'm Peter Boyles. Good to have you here. The weather's beauty. 79 the high today, 83 Sunday, 86 on Monday. In studio with us, and they come every couple of months, and then people get really angry, and they're here. But she's a physician. Dr. Reema Wahdan is with us, and Professor Rob Prince is with us, former senior lecturer at the Graduate School of International Studies at Denver University. We go back to the phones. We go to Jay in Parker, Colorado. You're on the radio show. Good morning.
Hi, Peter.
Hey, man.
I just want to correct some what I feel is misinformation that was not corrected. The plan of partition in 1947 gave the Arabs a big, big piece of the West Bank, the Gaza, northern Israel, a huge piece, and with Jerusalem being an international city. War didn't just break out. The Arabs did not accept that plan. Israel declared independence, and the Arabs attacked. As you know, wars have consequences, and one of the consequences is population transfers. What was the population transfer in Europe at the end of World War II? Somewhere between 10 and 20 million, right? Is that right, Peter?
I don't know the number. I'm not trying to dodge it, but I just don't know.
I looked it up. It was somewhere roughly between 10 and 20 million
that makes sense.
In Europe.
Sure.
At the end of, and wars have consequences. Why in 1948 Israel didn't completely expel everyone to Egypt and Syria and Jordan? I don't know, but they didn't, and now they're paying the price for not being as forceful as they should have. Why, from 48 to 67, when the Gaza and West Bank were part of Egypt and Jordan, did those countries not give independence to that area? It never happened. I don't know. Professor Robert Prince said, why would Israel want that Gaza Strip? Why is that important? It's a tiny piece of land. It's not important, except they're using that to launch missiles consistently into southern Israel for the past 30 years. Or no, since Hamas took control in 2000, whatever it was, 12 or whatever. That's why they're in there, to stop the missiles from being lobbed into Israel.
Professor?
That's it.
First,
close to the mic.
Jay, you know what?
Yes.
You know the name I was born with. My name was Prensky. My father changed it to Prince when I was 3. It was a shock for me. Anyhow, part of what you say, Jay, is true about what happened in 48. Your description of it is, I accept it. The Israelis won, and according to the UN plan, yes, the Arabs would have gotten more land, and at the end of the war, it wound up that Israel had expanded already for the first time. The way you put it, though, war has consequences, which in a way it's true. But look what you're justifying right now. You're justifying the expulsion and the ethnic cleansing of, at least in 48, of 750, 800,000 people that included pretty awful massacres, not just Dar Yassin, which is rather well known, but others. So there's all of that. The second thing is what you said about Gaza. We weren't talking about why the Palestinians are in Gaza. They're in Gaza because that's their home. We were talking about why is Gaza important to Israel. All right. So you took that in a somewhat different direction. Anyhow,
no, Gaza is not important to Israel. That's why they handed it back to the Palestinians. They need to reoccupy it to stop the missiles from being lobbed into southern Israel.
Okay.
It's that simple.
Let me.
No, don't give me the dismissive laugh and say okay.
Yeah,
Can you please
he's
address
right.
what I just said?
Who is the right?
Can you please?
Matt, don't. Yeah, that's really isn't, Professor. That's dismissive.
I'm not trying to dismiss him.
Well, what's the real issue between Israel and Gaza, and who's rightful owner of Gaza?
Who are you asking?
Yeah, I'm asking anybody here.
I mean, we're going to keep on going in this historical loop, but Palestinians have control of Gaza.
That's theirs.
Now, we are now currently in the reoccupation of Gazan territory. 2 million people being forcibly expelled. 60,000 people dying.
Yeah.
Hunger is being, induced by the state of Israel on the Palestinian citizens, and we have no humanitarian aid going into the Gaza Strip. So I get really, really offended by the word war has consequences. This is a violation of international law to the nth degree. This is not something casual that we do. We do not go back in history and say that the Holocaust was a consequence of war. This is not acceptable to even say that here.
That's very
and
good.
so when I'm sitting here trying to get food,
analogous. Those aren't analogous.
The death of one person is analogous. The death of one person, I don't care if you're Israeli, Palestinian, Christian, Jewish, it is analogous.
One at a time. One at a time.
That's not analogous because the Jews of Europe were not attacking the Christians of Europe. And that did not provoke the Christians into killing them because they weren't committing violence. Before October 7th, there was no Jew in Gaza for 20 years.
But the state of Israel has a concentration camp in Gaza. When you forcibly cause the Gazans to go under a quote diet, and you're forcing the people to be under siege for 16 years, and then you force them to everything's controlled going in and out or to extent. But you're not making. There is the same type of
I got
consequences.
a question for you, Jay. Do you think there's a genocide taking place in Gaza, and that the Israelis are committing it with U.S. support?
I think a lot of?
Is there a genocide taking place in Gaza as you understand it?
What does genocide mean? Define your terms. I'm not going to do that. Right. Define your terms.
No, it's a pretty obvious term. I don't need to define it. You're just trying to avoid the issue. All right, I'm asking you a simple question.
Palestinians are being killed. Yes, Palestinians are being killed. There was no concentration camp. If you look at videos before October 7th, there were high-rise buildings. There were automobiles. There were carnivals. There was hospitals galore.
Everything was going very well in Gaza until October 7th. There was no problems.
Jay,
it's not credible. You don't have to call me Dr. Professor. It's all right.
I know.
What you're saying is not.
I got confused.
That's okay, man. What you're saying is not credible. Okay, that's all.
But if you look at video, Pete, let me just talk for a minute, please.
Sure. Talk as much as
let him have it. Jacob, please. Jay's short.
If you look at photos and video before October 7th, those high-rise buildings have elevators. They have hydraulic systems. Those were imported. They were brought into the country. All those cars have transmissions. They have engines. This isn't an open-air concentration camp. Those all have to be repaired. It's repaired by people who are eating. If you look at a lot of those videos, no one the ANC. I'm talking about before October 7th. There are carnivals going on. There are things at the beach, festivals.
Jay's Peter.
This isn't an open-air concentration camp.
Jay's Peter. You got 19 months now of heavy bombing. The the death toll of little kids, and I know it's. I mean, we're trying to rationalize, and I think, Doctor, what you said was really important. But children, how many dead kids are there? And this isn't throwing blame one way or the other.
No,
but
I mean, and that's why I think we keep going. Who's the cause?
Yeah, right.
I'm just trying to stop the bleeding. Okay,
and it has to.
Like, that's where, and then the security. The security of both people are going to depend on this. That we are going to be able to come to some type of understanding that, the death on either side is not acceptable, and that the eradication or the ethnic eradication of Palestinians from their land is not okay either until we come to that thing. And I don't care, eradication on both sides. When I say stuff, we are not going to cause the eradication of Israelis from their land. And
we got 30 seconds. Jay, take 20 seconds and get the last comment.
If there wasn't one Jew in Gaza for, 15, 20 years, they weren't causing deaths in Gaza. This all happened because of October 7th. If you guys didn't fire one missile, not one missile into southern Israel, Gaza would have been an independent country by now.
And I disagree.
We're coming back. Everybody hang on. 303-696-1971. It's a... Now I get to say good afternoon, and good afternoon, everyone. It is May the 10th, a Saturday, 2025. I'm Peter Boyle, 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk station, and beautiful weather, 79 the high, 83 Sunday and Monday, 86 degrees. These folks do not get much attention or get much media time, and when they come on the show, it's usually an enormous blow up, and it has become that way this morning. And I welcome that. I think it's a good thing. Sitting in the studio with me this morning, she's a physician, Dr. Reema Wahdan with the Colorado Palestinians, and Professor Rob Prince is here, and he's former lecturer at the International Studies School, University of Denver, GSIS. And the issue, of course, as you would more than imagine, is what's taking place in Gaza. And this is, if you were to put a professor or a doctor to put a timeline on this, it's age old. It's Torah. It's biblical. It's Quran. It's this.
No, it's modern.
You say it's modern, but the control of Jerusalem, the holy city, goes back.
There's elements of that, of course.
And we watch Richard come to the Middle East. I saw the places where the Europeans came ashore in Lebanon to and the back and forth, and the Muslims have been as far north as Venice, and it's like this conflict that I try and see in a grasp, and now it seems to have gotten down, if that's a word, to now we're going to fight over Gaza Strip. How big exactly? Tell the audience how big
24 miles by 6.
Yeah.
About the size of Denver?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit smaller.
And I tell people, and if you look at Israel from 35,000 feet, Israel looks like Mr. Peanut. He's round at the top, and he comes narrow at the waist, and he gets round again. On this side is Gaza. On this side is the West Bank. Yeah. And how can there be a two-state solution? And how can there be, when you hear people chanting from the river to the sea that they want to eradicate Israel, everybody's shoulders go up. And now children, I mean, we talk about how many people are dead, what's left to bomb. Lecture to that, if you would. I promise we'll go to the phones here as quickly. But right. Doctor go first.
First, I want to make sure that we're all, when Palestinians say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Yeah,
it's not an eradication.
But that's what it's
people
taken.
Interpret that, but it is to allow Palestinians to live freely, to move freely, to be able to provide for their families, to be able to just be, if there's a so-called two-state solution, then there should be some type of ability to, go from one side to the other, which right now does not exist.
I don't even know how it could exist.
It doesn't, and it's been intentionally designed like that to dismantle the state of Palestine. But Palestinians are always been calling for justice and the right to live freely, and that's the call when we say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and that we will be able to live freely. And that doesn't say that we're calling for the eradication of Israelis. It is calling for just the Palestinian freedoms.
Professor.
Well, it's an interesting expression. Certainly, it's gotten all this publicity lately, but it originally comes out of Likud. It's part of the Likud Charter. They talk about Zionism from the river to the sea. Look, at this point, Israel should have more concerns than an expression. It's lost its credibility in most of the world.
It's used as a...
Yes, it is, of course. Yes, it's, oh my God. But they've always used something. So, when you and I both were started in on this, what did we hear? We heard about the PLO. The PLO was terrorist. The PLO was this. The PLO was going to destroy Israel. And what was I saying in those years? The United States should recognize the PLO because the PLO represents the Palestinian people. All right, 20 years later, after I don't know how many talk shows where I was savaged, right? What does the United States do? It recognizes the PLO.
Sure.
All right? So this is just, Zionism has got a certain way about it, and let me just take a moment to explain it. It is the perpetrator of oppression, but it claims to be the victim. Yeah. All right, we are the. It's like it's got its foot on the neck of the Palestinian people, and at the same time, it's saying we're oppressed. So this expression is just a part, basically a part of that kind of a narrative. And that's one of the things that we have to deal with here. Here, look, people who support the Palestinian right to self-determination, call it what you want. It's basically an anti-racist movement. It's an anti-racist movement. What are the anti-racists accused of? Racism. It's very clever to do that. You take the ideological offensive.
When I hear, then we'll go to the phones. When I hear people use the term they're anti-Semites, how can they be if they're also Semites?
Yeah. Nobody knows the terminology.
It's one of these talk radio things that goes on, and it says that the Palestinians are anti-Semites, and I said they can't be. I mean, I guess you could say they're anti-Zionists.
These are just...
But they're words.
These are just...
but you're a Semite, right, Doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The Levant region.
Yeah, and you're also, would you consider yourself Semitic?
I am an American citizen, born a Jew. Like yourself, I'm not a particularly religious person, to put it mildly, all right? But I respect other religions.
But you're culturally or ethnically or whatever.
I was born, but Judaism is a religion. It's a religion.
The boys in Germany in the 30s and 40s didn't think that.
They didn't think that.
No.
But the whole idea of trying to have Zionism represent all of Judaism, which is what it's tried to do. I mean, why should it matter, to be quite frank, if you're a Jewish person and you don't care about Israel one way or another, but you're deeply Jewish? All right, there's a lot of people like that.
Isn't there a part of the religion itself that does not recognize the state?
Yes, that's right. And you see these people, very Orthodox Jews in New York City. Right. They're the ones carrying the signs, anti-Zionist signs.
Yeah. Now, what are we going to do with what's like Columbia University and all the things that are taking place?
Stifling of like student voice and our ability to have free speech is outrageous. And even I'll speak to CU. CU has been, there are calls to, dismantle any Palestinian cause. And students will be, in some severe cases, expelled for speaking up. And this is not okay.
No.
And so I speak back to those when we're talking about freedom and justice and the ability for students to speak up to human rights and human rights violations. They should be able to do that at no repercussions against their academic pursuits.
There's a lot of First Amendment issues taking place right now, and beyond that, other things are taking place that I think are
taking it to the worst.
All right, here we go. We'll go to lines are jammed. This is Tracy. Tracy, you're on the radio show. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Pete. Hey, my question is about Jesus, and where do the Arabs or Mohammedanism, differ between Judaism?
Don't you know the answer to your own question?
I actually do. That's why I called. I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear their answer.
Well, I don't know why it means anything, but God, Professor.
Look. Hey, can I say this?
I'll say Jesus was Palestinian.
There are Christian Palestinians.
Yeah, there is.
All right. So we all know what Judaism is.
No. Wait a minute. You brought up Jesus. Do you know that there are? Here, Sirhan was a Christian Palestinian. Yeah. So there. So
they're gonna kill the Jews. They don't believe that
Saddam Hussein's number one guy, Tariq Aziz, is a Christian.
You know that Saddam Hussein went to college in Greeley, Colorado at UNC?
No, he did not.
No.
Yes, he did too. I read that in a Fort Collins paper. Hey, I tell you something.
We got to go.
You're mixing him up with the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, who did go to.
Yeah. All right. This is Don Thank you for calling the show. Good afternoon, Don. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, Peter, and good afternoon to your guests.
Thanks, man.
Good afternoon.
I learn a lot because I listen to your show, and I have something that I have not really been given a great explanation for. And what is the difference between Hamas and the Palestinian people, and who runs that country, if it is a country? Anybody can answer that.
That's a great question. All right.
I'll speak to who's running the divisions. There were elections being held. So the Palestinian Authority controls the West Bank, and Hamas controls Gaza Strip. Those elections took place, at least for Hamas. Those elections took place in 2006, and since then, no elections have taken place. But it was a democratically run election. Even Jimmy Carter went down during the election proceedings.
Right. Yeah. Well, Jimmy Carter means nothing to me. He's one of the worst presidents we ever had.
But you're listening. You're asking a question. Let her answer, please.
And so those are the two fractions that are running. The areas.
Sidebar: Jimmy Carter is the one who brought about the peace between the Egyptians and the Israelis. I don't know why you would.
Menachem and Begin.
Well, but everybody was killed in Sadat, and everyone was killed that was involved, and killed by their own. Yeah. It wasn't like when Sadat was murdered or assassinated.
Sadat was first, right?
Who was killed first?
He was watching a display. I think
I went.
He was in some bleachers, and I think he was watching his military, and he got assassinated.
Actually, I've been right at that place where it happened. It's a parade ground, and everybody ducked. They knew it was coming, and Sadat was standing. But when the other, I don't know which one was first, but the point of it was that there was factions on both sides. I've read quite a bit about it that didn't want peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the United States buys that peace. I don't know if you knew that under Camp David agreements, we give money to the Egyptians and we give money to the Israelis, and that buys the peace between the two.
So who is the head of Hamas right now? Who is running Hamas?
You know,
I don't think anybody knows.
Nobody knows, because every time they show
up,
well,
who's responsible? Who's responsible then for any type? And I'm not taking sides either way. When Hamas fires its missiles and they go underground to their tunnels and they grab hostages and they torture people, and they, personally, in my belief, they're starving the Palestinian people because of their behavior. I think the Palestinian people are a wonderful group of people, just like I think the Iranian people are a wonderful group of people. To me, it's always in this leadership. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is anybody running the Palestinian people, and who's running Hamas?
Anybody want the question? I mean, I don't know if anybody's running, and I'm not trying to be in the middle.
So is this like a free-for-all over there?
No,
I don't know. I don't know, Professor.
Well, I mean, Hamas is one of a number of groups that makes up the Palestinian National Movement. That's really all you need to know.
Who's its head?
I don't know.
I need to know who its head is.
So
I know who the head of this country is.
What's the point you're trying to make? You know, it does have a head, all right?
Who is there to arbitrate for Hamas? And who's there to arbitrate for the Palestinian people? Every country or group has a head.
There's no problem with that at all. The Palestinians have their own representative. The fact that I can't give you a name is not particularly important. They have their own representatives, and they have a representative in the United Nations. I'll talk to you however I want. All right, you're the one who's insulting me.
Hang on a second. Hang on, please. Hang on. He's trying to answer your question, and he doesn't have the answer, and you're getting upset, and it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I like answers and facts.
Well, if he doesn't have an answer, what do you want? You want him to lie to you? I guess he could do that.
I did answer his question.
He doesn't.
He just didn't like the answer, so he keeps on going. It's okay. I'm used to this.
Good.
All right.
Don, do something.
Let's move on.
Don,
okay, this isn't really going anywhere.
Don, is there anything else you'd like to ask, Don?
Is there anything else I would like to ask?
Yeah, give me a chance, please.
I'm curious where the kids protesting and people that are brought in, not even students on our campuses. Why can't they do this in a civil manner?
I think the protests largely have been in a civil manner. There has been no, I mean, in Colorado at least, there has not been eruptions and mass fires.
I'm talking on
Don't talk.
national.
Hang on.
I'm talking here locally. I can't speak to the stuff that's going on.
Let's go national. Don, go ahead.
I have said this before. I do not support any groups that step outside of our boundaries of peaceful protest. I didn't support the BLM. I don't support any group, I don't care what the religion is, that carries on, hijacks schools, stops kids from going to class, and I think we're all pretty aware this has been in the headlines for months?
So there have been protests because there's a genocide going on, and the kids are standing up, and they have been peaceful. And I would speak to even the ones on Auraria campus that have been peaceful, but there was 80 protesters that were arrested for their peaceful protesting. So that is what's happening nationally.
Who arrested them? I didn't see
The Denver Police Department arrested 80 students.
What did they give for the reason? What were they doing? Were they trespassing? Were they occupying spaces they weren't allowed to? Why did they arrest them?
I'm answering peaceful protest. There was a peaceful protest there, and they were arrested for a peaceful protest.
You got to be cautious here. I mean, Don's Peter. I mean, there's no question that First Amendment in this country is having some is really
under fire.
That's a great way to say it. But when you can start to make those decisions, remind you that demonstrations, beginning with I can make a case that perhaps the first civil rights demonstration in America was St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City. When you start looking at civil rights marches and demonstrations, anti-war in Vietnam, all those kinds of things. Right now, I mean, that's where it comes from. It comes from the street. And an enlightenment. I'll give you the last comment because I got a minute till the pause. Take the last comment if you want it.
Okay. Well, what you speak to, I totally agree with. Those were our own internal issues going on in the United States of America. These are not internal issues in the United States of America.
But that doesn't matter on the First Amendment. It doesn't matter on the First Amendment. The First Amendment's First Amendment.
Okay, so how do you feel about people who aren't legally here speaking out and protesting?
They should not be here.
Okay, so they have come in here on a visa. There's a set of rules. And
no. These are we're talking about American citizens that are. What I'm saying to you is, people get aware because people demonstrate. Remember when they demonstrated against the British, when they demonstrated Boston Tea, when they threw the tea into the ocean, those kinds of things. It's a human trait, and it's incorporated into the First Amendment. I got a break. I like to call. We're right back after this on 710 KNUS. Afternoon, everybody. 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk station, 10th of May, and tomorrow's Mother's Day. 83 tomorrow, 86 on Monday. Real quick, tell you about Danny Kaplan, so we'll go back to the guests and the callers. Dan's my guy, and suggests you should choose attorneys when you're in trouble, you need help. Somebody shares your values, and because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much about you and everybody involved in the case. And Dan, of course, son of a cop, we've talked about it. He's been a great friend of mine. He's dedicated the last 40 years of his life helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. And Dan's believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. And that's big. Dan's believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Kaplan's Law, the official law firm of the Nuggets and now the Avs. And Danny Kaplan's firm is a serious firm for serious cases. He accepts righteous injury cases on percentage fee basis. He can represent good people from all walks of life without regard of ability to pay. So if you need his help, it's 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551, or hit Dan Kaplan's Law, C-A-P-L-I-S, Kaplan'sLaw.com, and everything turns up. Call him. In our studio with me, and they about every 2 or 3 months we invite them in, and then for people get really mad and they call the radio station's owners and they call sponsors. And I for one, I mean it's okay, it's your right to do that too. But Dr. Reema Wahdan is with us. She's a physician, and Professor Rob Prince is here. He's a retired lecturer at GSIS, Graduate School of International Studies at DU. And the issue, of course, is, the Middle East, which is so much and so impossible for people to understand. But one of the things we were talking about off air, and I said this, does anyone believe that George Bush, when he made his decision to go into Afghanistan, had read a book, that he had cracked a book, that he had read anything about the Soviet experience in Afghanistan, or for that matter, anybody's experience in Afghanistan? Do you honestly think that he looked at that when they told lies about Saddam Hussein being involved in 9/11? Did they not think that somebody's going to catch up with them? And our involvement, our country's involvement in the Middle East, and now there's talk of the saber rattling at the Iranians, at the mullahs. We were talking about India and Pakistan a little bit, but that's like some kind of a general question or a statement. Doctor, speak to that. I mean, what do I watch?
What are you asking specifically?
Well, why does this country of ours that I love, why do we find ourselves
in these wars?
That's like the $1 trillion question.
Isn't it? I mean,
it is. Like how much?
Putting the Shah back on the throne.
Yeah.
What the hell?
All right, so, there's different ways of looking at the crisis and many different ways. Like human rights, you can look at it that way.
Economics.
Yes, economics. Yeah. What I try to do is to look at it geopolitically. Right. What does the region mean for the world economy? What does it mean for the United States? Okay? When we look at the Middle East today, from that point of view, it's obvious it's still very important because of oil and natural gas. All right? So who in the world needs and uses the oil and natural gas of the Middle East? I'll tell you who it isn't. It isn't the United States.
We don't, but we do.
We don't, but the oil is important to us because if we can have influence over that oil, we can influence the countries that get it. Europe, Japan, China, and Russia. And I'm convinced that at least part of the tension that we're seeing today, if the Middle East remains unstable, as it has been, and you've mentioned the different countries and historical experiences here. All right, who are the big losers? Who is the biggest loser in the Middle East? Now, the Gaza situation aside, if regional instability on the level that we see it. And one of the major losers is China. There's China. China gets more and more of its oil from the Middle East. All right? So does that have something to do with what the U.S. is doing in this region? Now, I'm not saying that I can tell you exactly what it is, but my answer is, of course. All right? Because geopolitics, as you said, is about economics.
Yes.
And when I look at this, like, let's talk about that Afghan region for just a minute. All right? Why'd we go? Who was really behind, if you like, us going, well, not us going into Afghanistan, but us countering the Soviet moves in Afghanistan? It was, I think he was the national security advisor. He had that wonderful Polish name, Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Yeah.
What was his thinking was not about the Middle East so much as it was separating China from the then Soviet Union, from Russia.
That's why Richard Nixon goes to China.
Yes, that's why Richard. So that is all going on, and on some level, and I know it kind of gets cloudy, the Middle East is central. Okay,
Absolutely.
To all that. And that's what's missing from the discussion, Peter. What role does all that have now? Okay. What role does, for example, the fact that China is trying to build the Belt and Road Initiative through the region, all right? And by the way, what I would more thoughtful people, and I can't give you names, but at D.U. Corbell, who understood this and was trying to get the Belt and Road Initiative through Israel. All right? Okay. So on some level, this stuff is significant. What I'm seeing is endless war. So whether we're talking about Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Palestine, if the region remains on this level of instability, what's the fate of the Belt and Road Initiative? It's in trouble. Trade, commerce needs stability. All right, and that's how it's like our country, unfortunately, seems to be engaged in endless wars. All right,
someone once said country made.
So we hear about. Remember why we were told why the U.S. went into Iraq? Oh, evil Saddam.
Saddam.
Yeah, Saddam.
He was training camps, and he had the bombs.
Right.
It was all lies.
But you said it earlier. You gave the geopolitical reason that it was about energy.
Yeah.
Now, you can't, like in the case of Israel, it's complicated. Of course, Israel it's got a little bit now off the coast, but Israel has never been a country that we've supported because of oil and gas.
Or Egypt. There's nothing there.
Right.
Yeah.
So then why is the United States supporting Israel to the degree that it has? Its most important ally in the world, geopolitically. Okay, what's the geopolitics of it? I'm asking you because I'm not sure myself. Okay.
I think after the Shoah, after the Second World War, the movement and everything is taking place in the awareness of, oh my God, what happened. And I think,
I look to the thing of you guys talking about the geopolitical. I think there's like an urge to dismantle everything on purpose for the benefit of Israel. But it's to our demise as Americans and all our tax money that's going into this endless sinking hole. I don't know if there's benefits geopolitically.
But when Stalin and again, if you look at the creators of the state, they really are. I mean, the first voter is Harry Truman, the second voter is Joe Stalin. I mean,
yes, that's true.
I think there was although Stalin, well, both of them were pretty anti-Semitic guys anyhow. You can see that in Harry Truman's writings and certainly in Joseph Stalin's actions. But I think there was such a shame about what had happened. And so...
But why did it have to play out in the Middle East?
That was the point of it.
I mean, why couldn't it play out in Europe where the Nazi crimes took place?
FDR goes to Saudi Arabia, and they've left Yalta, and he meets there's a great story where he meets, and he says, we're going to give this to the Jews because there were no Jews left in Poland, and to which the king said, well, why don't you give the Jews Poland? Mm-hmm. If there is no, there, and he had, and FDR, who himself was, at that point is very ill, but they brought the poison testers on. I'm trying to think of the name of the ship, the Augusta or wherever it was, but they brought poison testers on before the king came on. They were.
Oh yeah,
it was medieval almost.
And he came with his camels and his sheep on the ship.
That's right, he did. And they were going to cook.
And they did.
And so he meets.
That meeting is for U.S. Middle East policy as important.
I agree.
Or more important.
And nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about what had happened.
The deal that was set up, because we're still living with it pretty much.
And that was he confronts him, and he said there are no Jews left in Poland, and he said, well, why don't you give the Jews Poland? Don't come here. And it was meaningless. The deal was struck.
Right.
The deal was made. Balfour makes the deal. And for somebody that loves to read history in that part of the world is so intriguing to me, I can't really come up with any kinds of answers. I mean, you're going like this with your head. And it's just a crying shame because these guys are more alike than they are different. Yeah. And Isaac Deutscher, the great historian, that said, these are the Jews. That the role that these Palestinians play, they are the intelligentsia, they are the physicians, they are the bankers, the lawyers, they're the thinkers. Yes. They play the role that Jews were playing in Europe before the Shoah. They were playing that role. And if you travel in the Middle East, you see Palestinians will play that role. And yet, now what happens? And they both break my heart. Israelis break my heart and Palestinians break my heart. I wish I had an answer that you could say this is how it's done. But what did that guy say in Gaza? I watched him on TV, and he's saying this after 19 months of bombing. He said, okay, he says to the Israelis, what's left for you to bomb?
Have you ever been to Eastern Europe or the Soviet Union in your travels?
Yeah, I've been to Poland.
Okay.
And, sure.
So when you were there, did you run into the statements and the feelings of people about World War II?
Oh, certainly.
All right. And I assume you know the number of Polish casualties in the war,
enormous.
The number of Soviet casualties
20
in the
million,
war.
Sure, of course.
All right. So isn't that a Shoah also?
Well,
isn't that part of the Shoah?
Well, sure. I mean, Joseph Stalin, the Russians won, the Soviets won the Second World War in Europe. We beat the Japanese, we collectively, but the Soviet Union defeated the Nazis.
Shouldn't we be acknowledging that today on the 80th anniversary?
Not because of the Cold War.
All right.
And the truth of the matter is that Stalin had the largest land army in the world, and they took on the worst and the best of it. And when the first American sets foot at Normandy, I don't know how many miles from Berlin the Red Army is.
Right.
But they won that war.
We won it together. I guess that's my point.
No, I agree.
And we won it together, and the people who suffered of course, central to the suffering is the horror that happened to the Jews. But it also happened to the Poles and the Soviets and the Yugoslavs, and as well you know. Yeah. So my point is let's simply acknowledge that,
But they singled out. I mean, the singling out of Soviet Jewry or Hungarian Jews or Polish Jews, or when they when they brought in the death head.
Of
and
course.
The death head hunted them.
The Jews are the first on the list for the Nazis, but who's right up there with them? Slavic peoples?
Oh yeah,
gypsies.
Sure.
So my point,
homosexuals.
Yes, you got it. Yeah. The whole thing. So my point here is everyone suffered. This should have been the basis of some kind of cooperation rather than rather than what happened. And then this whole thing about Israel, for me, this issue, the issue of anti-Semitism is a European problem. And it's, as well you know, it still exists. Now, has it grown in other parts of the world? In large measure, because of Zionism? It has. All right? It has. And it's very disturbing to me. All right? Because one of the things that we see is, like you asked earlier in the program, the difference between Judaism and Zionism, and we make it all the time. But for most people, there's no difference, right?
Because
to be an anti-Zionist Jew is to be a Jew. That's it. And those of us in that position will face the same consequences that are going to come to others.
That doesn't.
We're
You're right.
talking about the HR bill that was almost passed.
That's right. Being told to break time. We'll come back now with phone calls. After this, I'm Peter Boyles. This is 710 KNUS. We got 9 minutes left in the show. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Saturday, the 10th of May, 2025. In studio, and the issue is, of course, Palestine, Israel, Gaza Strip, West Bank. Our guests are Dr. Reema Wahdan. She's a physician, and Professor Rob Prince. We'll go to the phones, try and get a wrap up on this. Let's go to Mike in Littleton. Mike, thank you for waiting, and good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon. I follow all this pretty close. I read a lot, and I don't want to be provocative, Dr. Wahdan, but I don't believe the Palestinians, people, or the Arab world wants this settled. And so I've arrived at a point after following this for 50, 60 years now that it's not going to end until one side wipes out the other. And I was just reading recently, to follow up on what that previous caller said. First, the PLO, or the Arab world, rejected the partition arrangement in 47. Year 2000, Arafat walked away from a proposal by Ehud Barak to offer 80 to 90% of the West Bank and Gaza as a Palestinian state. And so I'm convinced that it's never going to end until one side destroys the other.
This is Peter, then I'll let the guests go to that. Historians talk about parts of the world that there is no tomorrow. There's simply yesterday repeating itself. I find myself siding with the historical answer that you just gave. All right, to the guests. Doctor, you're first. It was aimed at you.
I mean, we're just going to go back to the Arab world are not going to back the mass deportation or expulsion of Palestinians from their land. Not Egypt, not Jordan, not Saudi Arabia. Palestinians want to reside in Palestinian territory. When we go back, I mean, I feel like when you put out the numbers that you put out, for a person who doesn't understand, Yasser Arafat rejecting 90% of the West Bank, we have to go through the whole entire territory of Israel. And from the 100%, it has been twiddled down to almost now 30 to 10 to like less than 7%. So when I give you 7% of a land that used to be 100%, and then I go from the 7%, I'm going to give you 90% of that. De facto, you're going down. You're going down from 100 down to maybe 3% at best. And so those are the percentages I just want to be cautious so that when we're talking about rejecting deals, every time the Palestinians are brought into some type of negotiation, we're not in the main sitting table. We're always in a different room where we're not being brought onto the table. So we don't have a seat at the table. The people they bring in intentionally are there to not have the appropriate knowledge. Lawyers are not involved sometimes, and the ones that are very well knowledgeable are asked to take a seat outside. So all of those barriers have prevented Palestinians being really fully integrated into the conversation of talking about negotiations about a two-state and people who wanted a one-state and making it all confusing. What I want to offer is we are not aiming to the eradication of one or the other. And I'm going to offer hope, because I feel like in this time when we're sitting in a genocide and I'm sitting with 50, 60,000 people, Palestinians dead, 27,000 children dead in the last 2 years, the hope that I have here is that people are now understanding this very convoluted, complicated terminology, this very complicated notion of Palestine, Israel, and conflate everything. When people now are really understanding at the very heart of it, nothing's confusing about apartheid. Nothing's confusing about ethnic cleansing. Nothing is confusing about colonialism. And the younger generation gets it. You saw that through the mass encampments. And we are hell-bent onto getting an area where Palestinians and Israelis can stand together, united, and to get 100% of the territory back where we can live in peace. And that is that's the hope that I offer, because negotiating and dwindling things down and talking about eradication and the death of people is not an okay thing to do.
Professor?
Okay, well, what I would say is that I'm now in a camp. I'm not convinced by your soliloquy there, but I'm in a camp, and I believe a lot of Americans are, where we need to get American money out of funding Israel, sell them all the weapons they want, get the heck out of there, and let the people fight it out. I don't want us involved anymore, and I don't really care what side wins, to be honest with you, because it's not going to end.
Yeah, I agree with you of getting
if I
American
can, Mike, this Peter, how do you feel about the war in Ukraine? Between
as far as whether it should end or
just your general notion of that between Ukrainians and Russians. How do you feel, and the role that the U.S. has played?
It's a proxy war, Peter. We're fighting it. We're funding it.
Absolutely.
It needs to end. We need to get out of that.
Yes.
We have no business doing that. We have no business in the Middle East either. Let's go back to George Washington. Wash your hands. Let these people fight it out.
Stay away. That's a wonderful call. It's to me. It's like goes back to when I asked the professor why did we go there.
Right.
They didn't come here.
Okay.
Very good call. Very good call, man.
Yes.
Thank you. I will let Professor. You need to respond to that.
All right. Well, it's Mike, I guess. Mike, first, I think it's hard to see an end to this tunnel, isn't it? And so I think there will be.
His phone's dropped now.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well,
but just keep going, please.
Yeah. Here's what. The reason I came here today, to be honest, all right, Israel is starving Gaza, and the world is doing nothing. How'd we get to this? How'd we get to let the Israeli army announce to the world the destruction of the Palestinian people, then level every home, every field, shatter every possession they had, and do it gleefully and with laughter? How did we get them to admit they were going to kidnap, torture, rape, even with dogs, and now starve them, even the children? So we're looking at something beyond words. What's happening? I don't know how it's going to end. When I think about what's happening now, I myself go back to World War II, which we keep referring to. Why and how? Because during World War II, there were people who were asked the same question. We don't see an end to this horror, this tunnel. There was an end, thank God, all right? I firmly believe, even if I can't give you the details, there will be an end to this. We're living at a time where genocide is unacceptable to the peoples of the world, including the peoples here. And that is why we're seeing this growth of really all it is sympathy with the situation of the Palestinian people. I feel like our government is complicit, including our congressional delegation. They talk about human rights and then they vote to send weapons. And that it's going to take the kind of public movement that existed to end the war in Vietnam and other wars. I wish it would be faster. I wish it would be, but it isn't. All I can tell you is, until my dying day, I will work for peace in the Middle East and for an end to this horrible.
Doctor, we've been around each other now for a couple of years. Do you see an end to this?
No, but I honestly, it's a plea to, I've had so many physicians that have gotten shot and executed for providing aid to their patients in Gaza. I've never seen that. A hospital is supposed to be a safe haven, and to see every single hospital in Gaza Strip destroyed is unfathomable, and the destruction has to happen. The truth around Israel's hypocrisies is also the shrouds have been, have fallen, and people are seeing the true nature of the Israeli government. And I hope that peace will prevail in this area.
See you again in a couple months.
All right.
To do it again, Doctor. Good to have you here.
Good to see you.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. What a good show. Thank you. And it was put together by Adam Walker. Folks on the phone, sorry, we're simply out of time. Back here next week. And we'll do it again on Saturday morning. In the meantime and in between time, take care. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. And it's going to be a beautiful couple of days. Thank you, Adam Walker.